I'd like to call to order our Wheat Ridge City Council meeting for August 24th, 2026. Please rise as you are able and join me for the councilors. In your packets, we had the study session notes for August 3rd, 2026, the City Council meeting minutes for August 10th, 2026, and the special study session notes for August 10th, 2026. Do we have any changes or notes for those? Seeing none, we'll give. I'm excited tonight. We have a special presentation. It's my privilege tonight to present the August Dominic Breton Community Champion Award. This award recognizes people who embody the spirit of community service that Dominic Breton demonstrated so well. People who see a neighbor in need and step up. Tonight, we are recognizing 3 neighbors who combined efforts demonstrated exactly what this award is all about. Diane Earps, Carolyn Toth, and Janet O'Keefe. When their neighbor, Evan, was attacked and seriously injured by a dog at large, he spent time in the hospital and began a long and difficult journey. While Evan was away, Diane, Carolyn, and Janet came together and coordinated with other neighbors and Evan's stepson to make sure that things that mattered most to him were taken care of. They looked after his home and yard and cared for his beloved dogs, organized meals and visits, and made sure Evan knew that he was not going through this all alone. But their support went far beyond those immediate needs. For years, seeing Evan walking through the neighborhood with his dogs or walking by himself had been a part of the daily rhythm for this community. After the attack, it wasn't clear whether Evan would feel comfortable walking again. So his neighbors helped him take those first steps. They arranged for someone to walk with Evan each and every morning as he became ambulatory again, giving him an encouragement and confidence to return to something that he had always seen as an important part of his life. This isn't really a story about one person. It's a story about neighbors coming together for a neighbor who needs them the most. Their care continues as they arranged a ride for Evan and coordinated with a network of volunteer neighbors to be here tonight. Evan, do you want to wave? Evan's here. Okay. There he is. Okay. That's the kind of thoughtfulness and follow-through that is exactly what community looks like. We also heard something that I think is a great deal, or has a great deal of importance to this neighborhood. When Officer Jay Lyon responded to the dog attack, he reportedly commented that this was the most supportive neighborhood that he had ever worked with. I think that's a remarkable compliment. Diane, Carolyn, and Janet, you helped make that statement true. You remind us that community isn't just a place where we live. Community is what we do for one another. Sometimes it's a big gesture, but more often it's the simple things. Checking on a neighbor, delivering a meal, caring for someone's dogs, providing a ride, or simply walking along someone as they move their way forward. Those acts may seem small in the moment, but together they can make an enormous difference in someone's life. Tonight, on behalf of the City of Wheat Ridge and your neighbors, we want to say thank you. Thank you for showing compassion. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for reminding all of us that we are stronger when we work together with one another. It's my honor to present the Dominic Breton Community Champion Award to Diane Earps, Carolyn Toth, and Janet O'Keefe. Congratulations and thank you for making Wheat Ridge such a wonderful community. And thank you for being great community champions. Would you like to say a few words? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Carolyn, and I just wanted to also ask, we did round up some of the other neighbors who were equally helpful when getting Gavin back on his feet. And if I could just ask them to stand right now. We're a community, and this is what neighbors do.
I have a feeling the second meeting of the month is going to be our favorite meetings coming up. We also have a special proclamation tonight for the Rotary Club. If I could have Greg Garner and Bob Tim join me up here. Whereas Rotary International, founded on February 23rd, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, USA, is the world's first and one of the largest nonprofit service organizations. And whereas there are over 1.2 million Rotary Club members comprised of professional and business leaders in over 32,000 clubs in 200 countries and geographical areas. And whereas the Rotary motto, service above self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. And whereas Rotary funds club projects and sponsors volunteers with community expertise to provide medical supplies, healthcare, clean water, food production, job training, and education to millions in need, particularly in developing countries. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus, and spearheaded efforts with the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and UNICEF to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas the mission of the Wheat Ridge Rotary Club is to build a better world, emphasizing service activities by individual groups that enhance the quality of life and human dignity, encouraging high ethical standards and creating greater understanding among all people. And whereas the Wheat Ridge Rotary Club has been partners and drivers of many initiatives, including providing scholarships to high school seniors, Rotary Rosers for senior living residents, Miracle Shop for elementary school families, Mobile Pantry for Highlands West seniors, Feed the Future backpack program for elementary school kids, Kits for homeless, Operation Warm to provide warm winter coats for children, and much, much more. And now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Corey Stites, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, along with the Wheat Ridge City Council, formally designate August 24th, 2026 as Rotary Day in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing our local Rotary Club and Rotary International for its more than 100 years of service to improving the human condition in local communities around the world. In the witness thereof, on this 24th day of August, 2026.
Yeah, we did all those things. No, but our club is very honored to be here today and appreciate very much the recognition. We have been a club in Wheat Ridge since 1975, so we just completed our full 50-year term, looking for another 50 years. The way most people, I think, will know us is over 20 years now running the Carnation Festival beer tent, which is our pleasure to do. It's a lot of work. We do it entirely with volunteers, and we love being a part of that tradition here in Wheat Ridge. You heard a summary of a lot of the things we do, from international work to help stop polio, to the local projects ranging from the Field of Dreams at the high school, the dog park at Fruitland Park, right? Christmas gifts at the Miracle Shop has been a project for several years. We have, as the mayor mentioned, a motto, which is service above self. We also have what we call the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? That is the underlying morality, the underlying purpose for Rotary. We've been here for 50 years. We look forward to being here another 50 years, and we very much appreciate this recognition. And now, And now you're going to hear about the next project that we have on our list. Do you need me to hold that? Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to speak now. Well then, thank you very much.
Okay. We will move on to citizens' right to speak. Citizens may speak on any topic not on the agenda for the evening. Because we have a special study session tonight, we will also take the comments for our special study session at this time as well. We'll go ahead and do our meeting comments first and then the special study session comments. When you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself, spell your last name, let us know whether you live or work in Wheat Ridge. On the clerk's desk there are 3 lights. When the lights are green, you have plenty of time to speak. When it starts blinking, you have about a minute to start wrapping up your comment. When it goes to yellow, you have about 30 seconds to wrap it up. And when it turns to red, please go ahead and finish up your comments. Don't make me gavel you out. It gets very awkward in here very fast. We appreciate everybody being polite for everybody else's time as well. So we will go ahead and start with our first speaker tonight. We have Bob Tim. And on deck, we have Aaron Dreesen. I apologize if I mess up your last name.
Hello, Bob Tim from Wheat Ridge Rotary again. I've got 2 quick things to talk about today. One is the number 65. 65 is the number of trees that Rotary has scholared into our community in the last 3 years. So we work with the forestry department and get some really great trees like redbud, hot wing maple, oak trees, lindles, and many more. So this is our 4th year. We got 20 more trees to give away. We have it up at our website. All you got to do is sign up. And we don't just give away trees. If you don't have a vehicle that can transport trees, we'll transport it for you. And if you don't know how to plant a tree, we got some extra planters that will plant it for you. But the real reason I'm up here to talk about is this monstrosity next to me, and that is that is around World Peace Day and a Wheat Ridge celebration. So every year on September 21st, the world pauses to observe International Peace Day, a day set aside for ceasefires, reflection, shared communication to something bigger than ourselves. This year, this day means something special to us in Rotary. It falls alongside the Rotary Club of Wheat Ridge 50th anniversary, 50 years of service, fellowship, showing up for our community. So we've decided to dedicate this day and milestone that in Prospect Park on September 21st, Monday around 11:30. So the peace poll reads, "May peace prevail on earth. It's inscribed in 9 different languages: Italian, Japanese, okay, assistant, can you turn it for me? Indonesian, German, Spanish, you saw English, Cherokee, and Braille. That mix wasn't chosen to reflect all the people that live in our community. It was more chosen of those people who live around the world, and for us to take a little time to honor those people, their cultures, community, far beyond our city limits, and remind us that peace isn't a local issue, it's a global issue. So we're going to have a little celebration. It'll be a short celebration. We hope to have some special people from these different languages coming up and speaking to us. And we're also going to provide a very modest lunch, a half a sandwich, a couple sticks of celery, a piece of fruit to remind you that not everyone around here gets to go to a fast food for lunch, and they live on very little stuff. I've got flyers back in the back on the table there. You can pick one up.
Thank you.
It's on the floor. Okay. September 21st at Prospect Park, 11:30.
Thank you. Thank you. Coming up next, we have Aaron Driesen and Meg Reed on deck.
Said it right. Erin Driesen, D-R-E-E-S-E-N. I just wanted to come up here. It's been a few months since I've been here. Wanted to take a moment to provide an update to the council on what's happening at the Ottawash location over at 5900 West 44th Avenue. We spent the last 3 months renovating, installing the world's first robotic car wash system there. We're really, really excited about it. Not only is it an engineering first for the community, for our customers, but it's also new technology that has a lot of innovative benefits. Partially, it's 50% less power than any other car wash out there. It actually uses 80% less water than other car washes as well. And with the drought that we're facing, we're really happy to be able to provide that in our industry. We started controlled customer participation in our testing process there. So there are people on site able to see what's going on and participate. And I would like to invite council to be part of that group so you guys can see what's happening as well. Additionally, the police are here. Is great touchless technology with vision that actually can see all their capsules and work around it beautifully. So we'd love to extend an offer to the police department to come with all their squad cars to get those taken care of here while the month is finishing up. That's it. We're really excited to be part of this community and offer this here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We don't typically cheer and Meg Reed, and then we'll go ahead and go to our study session. So Robert Robinson will be on deck.
Good evening. My name is Meg Reed, R-E-E-D. I am not a Wheat Ridge resident. Sometimes I wish I were, and I have friends in Wheat Ridge. So great town, and I'm just honored to be here. I volunteer with several organizations that try to assist immigrant families who have a loved one in detention or who might have been deported. I applaud this council for adopting policies to protect Wheat Ridge residents from the repeated overreaches committed by ICE on the daily. In my volunteer positions, here are just a few of those overreaches. These are things I have seen, heard myself talking to families. We explain to our immigrant neighbors that they have rights. One is protection from unreasonable search and seizure. This applies to anybody on U.S. soil, of course, citizen or not. One family I spoke with refused to open their front door, holding out for seeing a judicial warrant. ICE didn't have a warrant, broke down their front door, broke their front window, and ransacked their house, and then took one of the residents. There was no warrant. people have a right to see that judicial warrant. ICE is famous for having an ICE agent sign a piece of paper and showing that as a legit warrant, and of course it's not. Many people have told me that ICE told them they didn't have to produce a warrant, and then detained the person. No warrant. There's also a policy of safe spaces. ICE presence at schools, churches, medical offices is supposed to be off limits. I know of an elderly gentleman who pulled up to his church with his elderly wife. ICE just boxed him in, took him out of the car, left the woman in the car, unable to drive a stick shift. And he was detained and then deported. I see my time is getting up. Intimidation in general is their MO. Just being present or fear of being present, seeing unmarked cars, seeing people in unmarked clothing, combat type stuff, makes it so that they can't be comfortable in their community. Some days it feels like too much for me. And then I remember that I can go home and I can put my feet up and I can watch TV. They don't have that luxury. So again, I am so grateful that y'all are taking steps now to ensure the safety of your Wheat Ridge residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, again, no clapping and cheering, please. Robert Robinson is up, and Don Slavin is on deck.
Good evening, council, citizens. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I live in Wheat Ridge in District 3. I have three items in my comments. First, I request that the resolution should state, perhaps in the whereas section, that the city and residents are concerned with the ICE violence, deaths, detentions, and deportation to third-party countries more violent than the immigrants' home country. Second, I have a concern about the temporary holding cells. The comments in the policy draft we have here misses the point. It is not Wheat Ridge Police Department I'm concerned about. It's ICE holding cells, unknown to city officials, such as happened recently in Glenwood Springs. Wheat Ridge should make it clear that any such holding cells are a violation of the city's building codes. And third, and more generally, the proposed city policies fall way short of my concerns with the ICE abuses of power and the cruelty. The city staff could have researched what other communities are doing in this regard. They could have consulted with the at-risk communities in Wheat Ridge, frontline activists and their lawyers, and gee whiz, they could have even thought outside the box a bit in their preparations for the council. For example, put in a reverse 911 system to warn our residents about ICE presence. I urge more leadership from the city on this immigration issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Don Slavin, and Devin Green is on deck. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to tender to the clerk copies for council and for you and the city manager of my June 24th letter to the city attorney and of the Wheat Ridge Police Department's policy and procedure number 6.21 for dissemination at the appropriate time. Thank you. Thank you. Following me will be a series of speakers addressing each of the 5 proposals that have been presented for the special session. We originally had 6, but we whittled it down to 5 because we realized, after all, God only had 10 commandments. We wish to thank the council and the mayor for the 2 resolutions protecting safety and civil rights in the city of Wheat Ridge. As you recall, Resolution 2026-14 in February 2026 stated in relevant part, Mayor and City Council are committed to the protection of civil rights, close quote, and quote, this council reaffirms its commitment to promoting public safety, close quote. In July of 2026, in Resolution 2026-32, the city supplemented its budget by $40,341 to add to the $125,000 Department of Justice grant as part of fiscal year 2025 COPS hiring program, in which the city said it was committed, quote, to strong relationships between law enforcement and the community and community policing strategies. Although the backdrop of the special session is immigration, a federal matter, the real goals are, as stated in the resolution, protection of community and police safety and protection of civil rights. State law prohibits Section 287G agreements where local law enforcement works with ICE to arrest and detain immigrants. State law does not protect in Section 287G agreements where local law enforcements are working with ICE to transport immigrants and to investigate immigrants as authorized in the United States Code section referenced in my letter to the city attorney. These 2 loopholes need to be closed with both an adoption of a general policy and a change to the specific policy, specifically Wheat Ridge Police Department Policy and Procedure 6.21. I'm running out of time, so again, my name is Don Slavin. I have been a continuous resident of Wheat Ridge since 1969 and a continuous voter in Wheat Ridge since 1976. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Devin Green is up, and Steve Blett is on deck.
My name is Devin Green. I live in Wheat Ridge. My last name is spelled like the color. I have some copies of a statement that I am reading on behalf of another Wheat Ridge community member, with their permission. This is from a longtime employee at a local Wheat Ridge restaurant. I've noticed that Hispanic customers are not coming as much as they were before President Donald Trump. One of our employees now carries her green card because she is scared that one of these days she's going to be grabbed by ICE. My sister-in-law has a restaurant nearby as well. She has noticed fewer customers too. She has more Hispanic customers than us, and she is struggling to pay the bills because of it. And therefore, she is considering selling her restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Blett is up, and Megan Crow is on deck.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Bleddy, B-L-E-T-T-E. I am a proud citizen of Wheat Ridge at 2875 Depew Street. Thank you for taking the time to address this topic and the many topics that we have brought before you several weeks ago. The speed with which you have all responded to our last city council meeting was amazing, and I appreciate you all taking the time to do so thoughtfully. For the staff, thank you all for your thoughtful input in the drafted legislation. At our last meeting, several of you told us in your own words that we have to do something. We hear that, and we believe you mean it. Please remember this evening that doing something is not the same as doing enough. It will be easy for City Council to pass the version of these policies that generates the fewest phone calls and the least friction with the staff. just to check the box of doing something. We're not asking you to do that. As you go through each item tonight, the question to ask is this the most that we can do to protect our community? Instead of, how can we say that we did something? Those are very different standards. I had a chance to review the memo that you all put forward, and I appreciate the care you've taken with it. For the first item on the memo, we are pleased that the staff recommended a formal policy stating that the city will not enter into any 287G agreements. That said, our group feels strongly that the stipulation without explicit authorization by the city council should be removed. By offering an exception, it allows the whole thing to be undone without studying it again, which could nullify all of the hard work that we're putting forward on this go-around. If after this study session, City Council understands the full scope of the issue, what they're agreeing to, and the limits our citizenry is asking to be put in place, then we've accomplished something amazing together. If a year goes by or 2 years goes by and the nature of 287G agreements fundamentally changes, at the minimum, a new study session should again be required to fully understand the new information and to again allow the community to weigh in. So I ask that you remove the qualifier entirely. However, if that's not where the City Council lands tonight, then I ask that you say plainly what would actually justify revisiting this. Would it be a change in federal funding, a change in state law, or something else? Thank you again for all of your hard work and for taking the time to hear us.
Megan Crow is up, and Lauren Androsky is on deck.
My name is Megan Crow, like the bird. I am here to speak, I am a Wheat Ridge resident. I'm here to speak about section number 2 of the memo, the request to adopt a policy banning Wheat Ridge PD from offering material support to ICE operations. Staff stated that the term material support is not well defined and that adopting such a policy may prevent police from acting in the interest of public safety. However, the term public safety in this case is equally ill-defined. Safety for whom? For the person who has their car window broken and is violently thrown to the ground for refusing to open their door for a group of masked men who refuse to give a reason for that they do not intend to take any responsibility for the abuses of power and violence that they inflict. The time to make decisions about how to act in an emergency is before the emergency happens. Providing a clear policy helps officers to know how to act under pressure and ensures that our rights are protected. When a member of our Wheat Ridge community is killed and accountability is demanded, will we be able to say that we did all we could to protect them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually concerned about. We understand that council can't regulate what ICE agents wear. We understand the supremacy clause, but the core of what we're asking is to give us a way to know whether the masked or plainclothed person detaining us is actually a federal officer at all. Across the country, people have impersonated ICE to commit robbery, kidnappings, rape, and assault, including in Colorado Springs, whose police arrested a masked armed man with a fake badge posing as an ICE agent. We don't want that to happen in our community, as that's an issue of public safety and it's squarely within Wheat Ridge PD's existing authority. Colorado has existing impersonation statutes, found some examples of that. LAPD has some examples of that, so we're certainly not alone in coming up with what that protocol looks like in a way that can protect all of our citizens and protect the police department to give really clear standards for what we should do in those scenarios. Again, we really do appreciate the work that staff's put into this memo, the work that you've all put into this, and are really excited for our city to lead the way. Thanks.
Thank you. Heather Dalton is up, and Emily Fields is on deck.
Mayor, Council, thank you for taking the time to pride in being an alum at Wheat Ridge Junior High School. And growing up in this area and as an adult, I returned here because this is home and this is where I wanted to be. It's a great place to live. The rich fabric of Wheat Ridge has been woven by the immense contributions of many immigrant communities. And as far back as I can remember, we have been proud to claim strong Italian and Latin populations that have fed and cared our communities before the term mutual aid was a huge part of our modern vernacular, as we have seen evidence that still community care is still seen within our community today. So it was a common occurrence for classmates abuelitas to invite me into their homes when I was not having a great home life, as I was one of their families. And my life has been greatly enriched by these immigrant communities, as has everyone in this room, and they deserve our protection. Not only does this protect our beloved neighbors, it also keeps our dedicated officers and city officials safe from liability issues that could arise, as we have seen in the past. History will not look back on this moment kindly. So let us all take a stand together and let our future Wheat Ridge generations know that Wheat Ridge stood firmly on the right side of history. Please restrict ICE agents from using city-owned property. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker tonight is Emily Fields.
Hello, good evening. My name is Emily Fields. While I am not a resident, nor do I work in Wheat Ridge, I do love many people who are residents of Wheat Ridge, which is the reason I'm here tonight. I am speaking on the final proposal of our submitted memo. Thank you very much for your time this evening. There is one clarification that I would like to make about our request concerning temporary holding facilities. We are not asking the City Council to regulate or interfere with the Wheat Ridge Police Department's temporary holding cells. That was not the intent of our original language. Our request actually concerns separate ICE hold rooms that have been operating around Colorado, often in ordinary looking offices, field offices, and even commercial properties. Reporting by the Colorado Times Recorder found at least 9 such facilities in Colorado and documented 2,831 people being held in them between January and October of 2025. In some cases, people were held for weeks, despite ICE's own rules limiting the use of these rooms to 72 hours. Glenwood Springs provides a particularly important example for us. An ICE holding facility was operating in a strip mall there, essentially hidden in plain sight. The city has since taken steps to prevent that property from being used for ICE detention. We are asking the Wheat Ridge City Council to act proactively rather than waiting until something similar happens here. We ask City Council to make clear.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, quick question for you. Do you want me to read the at-issue part of this? Okay, yes, thank you. Would like to introduce Resolution 37, 2026, a resolution of support for joint application with the City of Denver and the Jefferson County Parks and Open Space Trails Partnership Program. This a resolution of support for an application to the Jefferson County Parks and Open Space Trails Partnership Program for an erosion mitigation project. At issue, the Jefferson County Parks and Open Space Trails Partnership Program allows communities within the county to apply for funding in the amount of up to 50% of the cost of projects related to regional trails. City Council resolution of support is required as part of the application. Staff would like to submit a proposal to fund the construction of erosion mitigation and safety improvement measures along Clear Creek Trail, north of Clear Creek Crossing Retention Pond.
Thank you. This is our consent agenda. Councilor Quinn, may I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I moved to approve Resolution 37, 2026, a resolution in support of application with the City of Denver and Jefferson County Parks and Open Space Trails Partnership. And I also moved to approve Resolution 38, 2026, a resolution of support for an application to the Jefferson County Parks and Open Space Trails Partnership Program for Erosion Mitigation Project.
I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Holteen. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Oh, we might have to do this by hand, huh? Ooh, is it not working? We blew a fuse over here. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
All right. We're off and rolling here. All right. Item number 2, Councilor Wood, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, item number 2, Council Bill number 16, 2026. This is an ordinance giving notice of and calling a special election to be held November 3rd, 2026, and submitting a ballot question concerning an increase in the city's sales and use tax of 1% for community capital improvements. At issue is, the City Council is asked to consider an ordinance calling a coordinated election on November 3rd, 2026, and submitting to the registered electors of the City of Wheat Ridge a ballot question authorizing a 1% sales and use tax dedicated to funding voter-approved capital improvements.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. I will open the public hearing. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation?
Quick one. Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, over the past several years, the city has undertaken substantial long-range planning efforts to identify its most significant capital needs. That work has included a facilities master plan, transportation planning, parks and recreation planning, bicycle and pedestrian planning, and other infrastructure assessments. The central issue is that existing revenues are not sufficient to address all these major capital needs over the next decade without identifying an additional dedicated funding source. The proposed ballot question in front of you tonight would increase the city's sales and use tax by 1% beginning January 1st of 2027. The ballot language estimates that the increase would generate approximately $11.7 million in the first full fiscal year, with additional amounts thereafter as revenue grows. The proposed revenues would be dedicated to community investments identified in the ballot question, including proactive street and infrastructure maintenance, bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements, preservation of community spaces at Wilmer Davis and Kohler Strand, replacement of the Anderson Park outdoor pool, and modern police and city services facilities. This is not a proposal that has been developed in isolation. Council has discussed the city's capital needs and potential funding strategies through a series of planning workshops and study sessions. Most recently, Council considered the city's polling results, debt capacity analysis, financing alternatives, project priorities, and a phased financing strategy. That work has led staff to recommend a dedicated 1% sales and use tax as a potential mechanism to address the city's highest priority capital needs. The city conducted statistically valid polling through Magellan Strategies to better understand voter priorities, support for capital projects, and potential funding mechanisms. The polling showed major support for a dedicated 1% sales and use tax, with support increasing when voters were provided additional information about the city's capital needs, the projects contemplated, and the city's commitment to fiscal accountability. If voters approve the measure, the city would not be required to undertake all these projects at once. The financing analysis prepared by Piper Sandler contemplates a phased approach over approximately 10 years, allowing the city to issue financing as projects are ready to proceed. This approach is intended to reduce interest costs associated with holding unspent proceeds and preserve the city's ability to respond to future capital needs. The analysis estimates that the proposed 1% tax could generate approximately $11.7 million annually and support approximately $236 million in total capital funding over the next decade through a phased financing and accumulated revenues. So staff this evening recommends approval of Council Bill 16-2026 to put this question to the voters at the November 3rd election. Thank you.
We have nobody signed up from the public to speak tonight, so we'll go to questions from council. Councilor Larson.
And thank you, Mayor. And City Manager Goff, just for the record, would you review what the current city sales and use tax is? And then just broadly, what areas are exempt from the sales tax?
Our current sales tax rate is 3.5%, our local sales tax. Exempt, the typical, Mr. Dahl could maybe pull out the code here. I'm not sure if I can speak to it top of my head, but, prescription drugs, I'm not sure what else is in there, honestly. Anything with exempt organizations, of course. What's that?
Gasoline.
Well, gasoline's taxed at different levels.
But not at the
city does
level.
not tax, no.
Right.
If you're curious, Mr. Dahl can pull up the chart.
I didn't mean
things that are
him
under
to dig
tax,
into
so.
the big black book
Okay.
there. So
Yeah.
we'll go ahead
Yeah,
and
okay.
pass on that. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask Councilor Wood for a motion.
Yes, I move to approve Council Bill 16, 2026, an ordinance giving notice of and calling a special election to be held on November 3rd, 2026, and submitting a ballot question concerning an increase in the city sales and use tax of 1% for community capital improvements on second reading, and that it take effect immediately.
Second.
I have
Tie
a
goes to Ohm.
Second by Counselor Ohm. Do we have discussion on the motion? Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you. This has been a lot of conversations to get to this point. I think that the one thing I just want to make mention of is in our polling, we gave respondents an option to support doing fewer things at a lower tax rate, and we actually lost support with that option. And so I think what we heard from our communities, they really want us to see us make all of the investments that we proposed. They weren't looking to bargain and save money and not do some of the things that have come forward. So I think that tells me a couple of things. One is that we've just done, I think, a thoughtful job vetting what's most important. I mean, we can always come up with our own list in a vacuum, and that is informed by our real needs through our facilities assessment, but to actually like find alignment with where our community is in terms of where they want to see reinvestment. I think that's one of the biggest metrics that I'm taking away, is that when we said we could tax you at a lower rate and not do as many things, we actually lost support. So I will definitely be voting yes to refer this to the ballot, and we have our work ahead of us.
Thank you. Counselor Wood.
Yes, I really just wanted to thank our residents who provided input during the surveys and polling that was done. For those who came out to the engagement events that we held in July and provided input and feedback so that we gained an understanding of what is important to you. I mean, that's critical. And so thanks to all who participated in that. And I also wanted to thank the Wheat Ridge staff as well for providing such good information to council in consideration of taking these steps.
Counselor Quinn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want everyone to know that we didn't take this very lightly as a council. A lot of work and study went into this. And as a sales tax, we're going to have other members of the community that don't live in Wheat Ridge also help pay for the things that we need. I was at Prost over the weekend, and oh my God, there's a lot of people there, and it was really great to see. So anyhow, I support this too, and we'll let the citizens decide.
Thank you. Counselor Okada.
Thank you. Just want to quickly echo the sentiments that the other council members have given. The thanks to the community for our Engage Wheat Ridge month. Thank you to council as well for the organization of that and being able to get that outreach to happen, but to staff as well as the contractors that we had. This is my first time participating in a tax measure from the inside, and it's very satisfying and heartening to know how much deep thought goes into it, how much deep investigation into what do our residents think, what will this actually get for us. So I just wanted to express that and just say an all around thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of the similar comments that my fellow council members have already said, but I did want to add that, looking back, at a long time ago at some of the old bonds and seeing where we were at and hearing the statements of, we need to do something about our infrastructure. This has been a long time, and that we really do need to address a lot of these needs of our city to keep our community safe and provides some enjoyment like the pool, just we have a lot of aging infrastructure, and I think the staff and our consultants that we hired to look at the polling and ask those tough questions, I think they've been really thoughtful. I'm definitely supportive of this, and I hope to have more continued discussions with the residents and the community. We really need their support. This is something that the community needs, the city needs really badly. So thank you.
Comments? Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Sorry, I probably should have done this as a rhetorical question to the city manager, but Patrick, would you mind just reviewing how, what changes once we take the official vote to refer this to the ballot in terms of the city's role and council's role and what's allowed and what isn't, or Dahl, if you want to take that, one of you, I think that would just be helpful for everyone to
You want
gain
it?
clarity.
The Campaign Reform Act, Colorado's Campaign Reform Act, for good reasons, prohibits government from spending money to advocate for or against ballot measures or candidates, for that matter. That's why you don't see governments paying money to advance someone's candidacy or defeat someone else, and that's all good government. The question is, so when does that restriction apply? And it applies once a ballot question has been set. And tonight, you're setting a ballot question if the ordinance passes. So after that time tonight, the city will not be able to spend any city funds or in-kind services to support or oppose this measure at all. Council has the authority, as the statute gives you, a couple of specific things. One is to pass a resolution of support, if you wish. So if there's a resolution of support for this ballot measure on a future council agenda, that is permitted. Individual council members, of course, wear their hats as council members and as people in the community, and everyone in the community can decide to spend their own personal time and money supporting or opposing a measure on the ballot. So that's not precluded. In-kind services, the city office is being used to do the mailing for a campaign for or against, not permitted. But so the line you can see is pretty well drawn. No city money or in-kind services, with a very narrow exception for council, if it wishes, passing a resolution of support. But very often people forget that beyond being council members, you also are members of the community, and you may see people saying, "Oh, how can you be out there supporting a measure that you voted for on the council? Isn't that prohibited?" And it isn't, because remember, you have those rights too, and your individual rights to support or oppose things are not changed by Colorado's Campaign Reform Act. And in fact, the act is really express in saying you retain and have those rights. During an election campaign, usually there are questions that you get from members of the public or others saying, is this okay or is that not okay under that act? And I very much encourage you to forward those to me, make sure I see those. It's a common exercise for me to have to answer those questions. I have in the past, and I'm ready to do that. Sometimes questions fall in the cracks in terms of a fact pattern. It doesn't fit neatly within what I've said. And I encourage you to reach out to me as soon as possible. I can give you the response, and that can get back to your constituents if that's where it came from.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Eight ayes, no nays. Motion carries.
And we have a ballot question. Excellent. Moving on to agenda item number 3, Mayor Pro Tem Holteen, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 17, 2026, an ordinance approving the sale of future city-owned real property and in connection therewith authorizing execution of a purchase and sale and other related agreements with Spectra Centers. Patrick, do you want me to read at issue, or is there a presentation?
This is first reading, so
Oh,
no.
sorry. Do you want me just to have it be a first reading? All right. Okay, and in the spirit of first readings, I move to approve Council Bill number 17, 2026, an ordinance approving the sale of future city-owned real property and in connection therewith authorizing execution of a purchase and sale agreement and related agreements with Spectra Centers for the approximately 4.5 acre portion of the former Wilmore Davis Elementary School property. Order it published and a public hearing set for September 14th, 2026 in City Council chambers.
I have a second by Councilor Okada. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Eight ayes, no nays. Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, Councilor Martell, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce a motion to approve appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. At issue, there are currently 4 at-large vacancies to fill on the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee. The mayor recommends at-large appointments, which are ratified by the city council.
Thank you. This is a motion for the council. It's not quasi-judicial. I will go ahead and start. Well, Mr. Goff, we don't have a presentation, I assume? No, okay. I will go ahead and start. I request the appointment of Abigail Stewart to the at-large Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee vacancy term to expire March 2nd, 2028. And I request the appointment of Noah Duran to the at-large Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee vacancy term to expire March 2nd, 2029. And I request the appointment of Lena Hamilton to the at-large Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee vacancy term to expire March 2nd, 2029. And I request the appointment of Carlisle Bird Mueller to the at-large Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee vacancy term to expire March 2nd, 2029.
Second.
I have a second. Well, I guess I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Holteen. Or do I have a motion? Oh, do you want to, okay, give me a so move then. Just a quick so move. Thank you.
I move to approve the nominations as listed by Mayor Stites.
Cool. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I move to ratify the mayor's recommendation as presented by the mayor.
We'll take Councilor Martell's motion. You second her motion.
Second.
There we go. Sorry, we got a little off there. All right, so we have Councilor Martell as the motion maker there, and Mayor Pro Tem Holteen, sorry, I messed that up, is the second. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
All right. Moving right along. Councilor Quinn, will you please introduce agenda item number 5?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. It is my honor to introduce the next motion, a motion approving the naming of the green at 38th, the community pavilion in honor of Dominic Breton. The issue: Dominic Breton passed away on June 18th, 2026. He was known for bringing people together, strengthening community relationships, and supporting key civic and business organizations such as the Chamber and the Grange. Mayor Corey Stites proposed naming the community pavilion at the green at 38th the Dominic Breton Community Pavilion. Naming the pavilion in his honor reflects the values of the city's naming policy and acknowledges the lasting legacy he left within Wheat Ridge.
Thank you. This is a motion for the council. It's not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation?
Yeah, I believe Karen O'Donnell, our Parks and Rec Manager Director, has a few words to add.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that the policy that was adopted in 2009 for naming parks and facilities requires a 2/3 vote of the Parks and Recreation Commission. That took place during their meeting on August 19th, and then the next step is a 2/3 vote of City Council. And if you have any questions about the meeting that took place on August 19th, Brandon Altenberg is our Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation, and he is the staff liaison and can answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you. We have nobody from the public signed up to ask any questions or speak tonight, so we'll go to questions from council. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and ask Councilor Quinn for a motion. Oh, wait, sorry, Councilor Martell.
Would this be the appropriate time to talk about the different choices? Are we supposed to make a decision here?
That's a good question.
Were we supposed to decide about the two
If you have any feedback, we'll take
presentations?
it. We weren't necessarily looking for consensus or anything, but if you have feedback, we'd love to hear it.
Good question. Any other questions before we go to a motion? Oh, Councilor Quinn? No? Okay. All right, then I will go ahead and ask you for a motion then.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve naming of the green at 38th Community Pavilion in honor of Dominic Breton.
I have a second by Councilor Larson. Do we have discussion on the motion? And this might be a good time too, if you want to offer some feedback.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I am the liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission, and there was a lot of discussion and different ideas were presented about this, and it was pretty well received. There was one little worry that we don't make something that is more of a wallpaper type of thing. One of the, and what I mean by that is just putting something on the pavilion up at the top felt, for some of the folks, it felt a little dry. And one of the suggestions was getting a nice big rock kind of thing that was more like a place where people could sit and talk, like a bench, and have a plaque on there. And it talked about Brenton, list the things that Brenton did and what he was all about, and why why this was named after him instead of just a little plaque with his name at the top of the pavilion. And so that was some of the discussion, and it was it was a real personal honor to be a part of that.
Any other, Councilor Martell?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Quinn, for that information. I was reviewing the two proposed ways we could honor Dom, and I really did like the plaque with the actual face and information. I like the idea of the sign up on the pavilion so people really see it. But with that background of the conversation, I can understand the need for, or the desire for, something a little bit more meaningful. The example we got of the plaque that would be on the stone doesn't have a lot of detail. How much of Dom's history would we be able to put on a plaque?
It would likely be fairly concise and limited, just because of space and the size of letters on that type of plaque. But staff could draft some options and bring it either to commission or to city council for feedback, but
That would give us the opportunity to have more details than just his name and in memory of, but some of his impact.
Yeah, the thought was at least listing his involvement with the Grange and the Chamber and other groups, but we don't have a ton of space for that kind of thing.
It would have to be a really, really big rock to put all of his contributions. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, discussion on the motion? All right. Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
My thanks to the council and to Parks and Rec for all their hard work on this, and to Dominic, who very well deserved it. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6, Councilor Snell. Will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is resolution number 39-2026, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Jefferson County and authorizing the mayor to execute a grant agreement with Jefferson County Parks and Open Space for improvements to the Route 32 bus stop at West 32nd Avenue and Kipling Street. At issue, the city of Wheat Ridge has been working with RTD to restore bus service along 32nd Avenue, including service to Wheat Ridge High School. To support this effort, several existing bus stops between Wadsworth Boulevard and Youngfield Street must be upgraded to meet current accessibility standards. The most complex of these is the bus stop at the southwest corner of West 32nd Avenue and Kipling Street, adjacent to Crown Hill Park, which straddles the border between Wheat Ridge and Jefferson County. This resolution approves agreements for cost sharing and allows the city to construct and maintain an accessible path and boarding area for the RTD bus stop.
Thank you. This is a resolution of the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation?
Yeah, we do. I want to turn it over to Lauren Mikulak here in a second, but first, before I do that, I want to thank her and the rest of the staff. They've worked very, very hard and jumped through many hoops to try to get bus service back into Wheat Ridge, especially for our high school. So not quite 100% there, but hopefully in September, the bus will be rolling along 32nd again out to Clear Creek Crossing. So I think Lauren has a little bit more to add.
Thanks, Patrick. Yes, I was going to share this is the culmination of sort of a multi-year effort to restore bus service to the western portion of Wheat Ridge when the Route 32 was terminated at Wadsworth in 2020 as a result of some of the COVID reductions. The RTD board recently approved their upcoming service changes, so we're happy to share that Route 32 will extend from Wadsworth all the way to Clear Creek Crossing in late September. We've shared that news at the high school. It has been a true partnership with multiple agencies With tonight's approval, we will have one more IGA to bring before you. Our engineering manager, Rocky McSelk, has been working with the Wheat Ridge residents who comprise the Watrous Ditch Company, and so we're finalizing that agreement that would likely be before you next month so that we can get all of these stops up to standard. Thanks.
Thank you. We have nobody signed up from the public to speak tonight, so we'll go to questions from council. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we know when the new bus stops or the replacing bus stops will be identified on that stretch of 32nd?
They have been, the bus stops that need upgrades or are able to be opened have been inventoried by RTD over the last year. So this is the only one that requires a multi-jurisdictional arrangement to pour new concrete. But the other ones are on our radar, and we're working with RTD on those actively.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Wood.
Thanks for the presentation, and this really is good news for sure. One question I have is the ADA requirements that are that have to be constructed at the bus stops. Will the new service be able to begin, or the what am I trying to say? The reprise service, will it be able to begin prior to those improvements being put in place?
Yes, good question. RTD has committed to opening the line, I believe it's the last week of September, regardless of whether these last few improvements are in place. So those stops will come online as they get completed.
Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you know where the next bus stop going east from this location would be approximately?
I don't know that off the top of my head. They do have a new service map on their website, but I don't know. I don't recall which stops those are.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Quick question. I know RTD is kind of hamstrung as far as finance goes, and they might be looking to reduce routes. Given that this is a brand new route and probably won't have the ridership yet of some of the established routes, are they going to start it and then cut it?
They have let us know that retaining this route will rely on strong ridership. So as we get closer, we will do everything we can to make this pretty well known, both as an origin and destination. So I think our vision as we worked with RTD to build that bus terminal, that bathroom, essentially the driver relief station at Clear Creek Crossing, was a recognition that the hospital and the apartments and the activity at Clear Creek Crossing could provide ridership just as much as people trying to get out there, people trying to get to the high school. So we'll work with our comms team to try to make sure that it is well known and well written.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll ask Councilor Snell for a motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the resolution number 39-2026, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Jefferson County and authorizing the mayor to execute the related grant agreement with Jefferson County Parks and Open Space for improvements to the Route 32 bus stop at West 32nd Avenue and Kipling Street.
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Martell. Do we have discussion on the motion? Councilor Larson?
Mayor, did you close the public hearing part of this discussion?
This wasn't a public hearing.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hulting.
Thank you. I just actually just happened to meet today with the RTD board president and was telling him about this, and he was just saying how important it is to have this type of partnership with local governments. If you want your community to be served by transit, like really identifying the priority service routes. And anyway, I just kudos to staff for really taking the lead on this and doing all the work to make it happen. People may or may not know, but RTD allows youth 19 and under to ride for free. So the extension of this line to serve our high school and to go further into Clear Creek Crossing will really provide free of cost mobility for our high school students to enjoy more parts of our community. So I'm really excited. I hope that the robust ridership is enough to keep the line in service as RTD does its evaluation of its service cuts over the next couple of years. Thanks for all the work.
Councilor Wood.
I truly appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's comments about RTD ridership and the importance of that. I think one of the things that's really changed over the years, as we all know, is Clear Creek Crossing and the hospital in particular, which really theoretically and hopefully should add ridership in addition to the students that, as has been noted, can ride for free. I think there's reason to be hopeful that it'll be a very successful route.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7. Councilor Larson, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a motion awarding a contract to the Farnsworth Group Incorporated for designing a replacement outdoor pool in the amount of $666,662. The Anderson Outdoor Pool is nearing the end of its useful life, with significant foundational and structural issues necessitating a full replacement. This proposed motion would award the design contract for the replacement pool to the Farnsworth Group, who was selected for the recommended contract following a competitive procurement process.
Thank you. This is a motion for the council. It's not a public hearing. It's not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do you have a presentation?
We do. Our Deputy Parks and Rec Director, Brandon Altenberg, is here this evening.
Just kind of a brief background on this. We've had a competitive procurement process over the past few months to find the right design firm for this major project for our community. We had 11 eligible bidding firms and narrowed that down to 4 finalists. They came in for interviews, and we do have the Farnsworth Group as our preferred vendor and are recommending the contract award tonight. It is under budget that was planned for the 2026 budget for the design phase, and we're excited to get started with this project team pending tonight's vote. So happy to answer any questions about the process or the next steps.
Thank you. We have nobody from the public to speak tonight, so do we have questions from council? Seeing none, Councilor Larson, may I have a motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the motion awarding a contract to the Farnsworth Group Incorporated for designing a replacement outdoor pool in the amount of $666,662.
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Okada. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Eight ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8, Councilor Okada, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a motion awarding a contract to Wember Incorporated for owner's representative services for the replacement outdoor pool project in the amount of $291,887. At issue, the Anderson Outdoor Pool is nearing the end of its useful life with significant foundational and structural issues necessitating a full replacement. This proposed motion would award an owner's representative contract for the replacement pool to Wember Incorporated, who was selected for the recommended contract following a competitive procurement process.
Thank you. This is again a motion for the council. It's not quasi-judicial. It's not a public hearing. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this one?
Yeah, we'll turn it back to Brandon.
Yeah, for these services, we had 4 firms bid with 1 preferred vendor, Wember. And if awarded, this firm would help us with the pool project for the entirety of the project, not just the design phase, through construction, whenever that may happen. And they're meant to serve as kind of the city's agent throughout the entire design and construction process for building a new pool.
Thank you. Again, we have nobody signed up to speak tonight from the public, so we'll go to questions from council. Councilor Quinn.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I probably should have asked this. It just, sometimes the ideas come in late. Brandon, how long are both of these contracts for? Is it like and I know we're probably beyond that, but the design phase of it until the design is done, I assume is what the contract's for. And this you said already was for design and build, correct?
Correct. Neither has a termination deadline date. It is a not to exceed contract amount for the cost of that work. So the design phase is estimated to take 10 to 14 months. It could take longer, but that's the estimate. And yeah, Farnsworth would do that work even if it took longer than that time frame. For the owner's rep, the contract is worded as, we don't know exactly when this project will be funded for construction. We hope it may be in 2027 or 2028, but it could be longer. and we worded the scope that way. So they would serve the entirety of the project, however long that took.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Counselor Larson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just to follow up on that, a owner's rep basically follows the project from the very beginning to the ribbon cutting.
That's correct.
And if something goes wrong, a delay or something like that, is there, the amount of money that we're outlining in this motion tonight, is that fixed, or is there something like that could get added on at the end that they had to do some extra work or something? How does that work?
It's set up as a not to exceed. However, should something in the design or construction process be totally out of scope, there's a possibility for a cost increase, but it is meant to be the highest end of the contract cost for this work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Holtine?
Thank you. I'm just curious, what are other, at what scale do we engage an owner's rep? Like, is there a threshold for the city in which this is something that we decide is like needed for a project? And because I know we had one, I believe, on the Wadsworth project. Is that correct?
Yeah, AECom acted as our, basically our owner's rep. Prospect Park, we had an owner's rep. And the Green, we had kind of an owner's rep. It was we brought the contractor on through the design process, so they were acted as our owner's rep as well. There's not necessarily a threshold dollar amount. I think it's the complexity of the project. A pool project like this is fairly complex. We don't have staff on board that can watch it day after day close enough to make sure that to deal with, like Mr. Larson said, any risk that may come up that we don't catch. So it's well worth the funding, we believe, to have an owner's rep on board.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to get a better sense of what types of projects that this necessitates. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Counselor Okada, may I have a motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve awarding a contract to Wember Incorporated for owner's representative services for the outdoor pool replacement project in the amount of $291,877.
I have a second by Counselor Ohm. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 9. Counselor Ohm, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 40-2026, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Wheat Ridge and the Colorado Department of Transportation for the construction of the 44th Avenue pedestrian hawk signals project. At issue in 2026, the city was awarded funding through the Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, to construct 2 hawk signals at 44th Avenue and Miller Street and 44th Avenue Lamar Street. The funding includes federal funds only. CDOT administers the funding, so an intergovernmental agreement needs to be executed that outlines the various parties' responsibilities, summarizes the funding sources, and details the requirements of the funding sources.
Thank you. This is a resolution for the council. It's not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this?
Just some brief additions, but Kent Kisselman, our Public Works Director, is here. Thanks.
Thank you for having me this evening. Yeah, this is just safety, trying to cross 44th. So new hawk signals going in at 44th and Miller, 44th and Lamar. The funding breaks down in your packet. Our contribution is $81,401. The money we will receive is $732,805. After approval this evening, hopefully, next steps will be this will be routed for signatures. Olson is already currently doing the design. This was included in our 2J sidewalk gap items, so they're working on the design. And after the design, we will bid for construction, and this will be a project for 2027. And I'll answer questions if there are any.
Thank you. We have nobody signed up to speak from the public, so we'll go to questions from council. Mayor Pro Tem Holtine.
Thank you. I'm excited to see that this got approved. And although I know in order to get improved, we have to have data that shows we need it. So I just for clarification, so both locations have an existing rapid flashing beacon signal installed. So can you maybe speak to,
Setbacks, stop bars, all those things that go with that. So it's a huge improvement, very, very safe crossing. And so it's going to be an enormous improvement for 44th. I personally have tried to cross over at the one on to get to Prospect Park, and it is, you're riding your bike and you press the button and you pray and you go. And so looking forward to getting these installed.
thank you. And I think hearing that we might repurpose the existing rapid flashing beacons, I think they're terribly placed on 4-lane roads. They just create like additional, I think, unanticipated dangers with cars stopping in the middle lane, and then the car behind them doesn't know why they've stopped and go around. And we have had a student hit because of that. So as we look at opportunities to enhance safety through the repurposing of the rapid flashing beacons, I really hope we're just looking at 2-lane or 2-lane with the center turn lane options. Because that 4-lane crossing configuration is, nothing's more dangerous than the one over by the truck stop. I personally have used it, and it even has a center pedestrian island, and it's still terrifying. So I think, the locations and the design standards for the rapid flashing beacons, I think can be more thoughtfully used. And I think the Hawk is a great way of addressing crossing on 44th Avenue. So congratulations on this grant.
Any other, Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. I did just a little bit of looking, and because I wasn't really sure on the difference between the rapid flashing beacon, which are the familiar rectangular yellow flashing that people, I don't know, sometimes it seems like they speed up to maybe figuring they're going to beat the red light. That never comes. But if I understand correctly, a Hawk signal is more like a traditional intersection signal where there's a pole and then the mast goes over the street. So it's basically in the center line of that lane. Am I thinking of those correctly? How they look?
You're right. It'll be like again, like a regular signal, but it won't be in the center of the road. It'll be on the side like a typical intersection, and then it'll go up on the pole, and then the mast arm will project over the roadway.
So there is something that is from the curb onto sort of above the street.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll just be imagine a traffic signal at an intersection in a mid-block in a singular fashion.
And the difference
red,
is,
yellow,
I'm sorry.
and green lights.
The difference is that instead of like 3 red, yellow, green across, they'll have, is it 2 red lights? What's the sequence for how it's activated?
Yeah, I couldn't say the actual colors of the bulbs. Again, we'll have to look in the MUTCD, and that'll be up for the design team for a traffic engineer. But yes, it works. It functions as a regular stop. So again, it's an activated button. You'll activate it from if you want to cross, and then the light will go, it probably won't be immediate, but it will sequence and go from green to yellow and then a red.
Right.
And then you'll cross.
And red light, hopefully people understand that red lights do mean to stop.
Yeah, again, there'll be stop bars, there'll be signage, you will not be able to miss it.
Right. And this is just something as I'm reading through this, and I understand that these sorts of projects are complicated, and there's a lot of things that go into it. But and I understand the Wheat Ridge portion of the total is a small portion, but $814,000 for 2 traffic lights just seems a little on the high side.
It does not. Usually a traffic signal, usually each mast arm and head, and the pole is usually, we usually try to estimate about $250,000 a piece. So again, there's additional components in the Hawk signal because there's going to be PED activation buttons. We're going to have to put in new ADA ramps. So there's more to it than just that. A typical rule of thumb for a mast arm and a signal is like $250,000.
So the total for these 2 signals is reasonable?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to echo Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen's comment about, the yellow lights. I was experienced on 38th, a little east of the Discovery Park where the yellow light was on and it was flashing, and I waited for a group of, I think some disabled individuals, and they were trying to I had stopped and they were wanting to cross the road, and some person behind me decided to use the center lane as a bypass lane. And I kind of got really nervous as these people are trying to do what they're supposed to do, and someone got impatient. I am all for the Hawk signals. I have experienced them in other cities around the United States, and they're really effective. They really get your attention. Thank you so much for, getting us to this spot. And I hope to see more of them where the need is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Council? Seeing none, Councilor Ohm, may I have a motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 40-2026, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Wheat Ridge and the Colorado Department of Transportation for the construction of the 44th Avenue pedestrian Hawk signals project.
Second.
I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. That was our final agenda item for our meeting. We will go ahead and adjourn our regular meeting. It is 8:07, and we will adjourn our regular meeting. And we will come back for our special study session in 10 minutes. So we'll go till 8:15. I'd like to call to order the special study session for August 24th, 2026. We have one agenda item tonight, which is our federal immigration enforcement, our city authority and recommended policies. So we will jump right in and go right to Mr. Goff with our staff presentation.
Mayor, thank you. Those this evening, and I believe you received written comments in email and in your packet. We do appreciate the time and thought they have invested in the city attorney, police chief, and I have reviewed their comments carefully. Several of the comments clarify or materially change the original request, so we will address those during our presentation this evening. We plan to go through all 6 requests, if that's okay, between Mr. Dahl and Chief Murtha, and then we'll open it up for questions after that. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry first.
Yeah, a little bit of context, a little bit of context around what the sort of the state and state and federal law sort of environment is that we work in, that I think will be helpful as we go forward. And I want to say that we must, of course, apply state law to the actions that the city's officers and officials take. And Colorado law recently, in fact, over the last couple of years, has really limited the degree to which local governments are allowed to and are prohibited from engaging in law enforcement or civil immigration enforcement with federal agencies. And that has come as a result, of course, of the kinds of issues that the citizens tonight brought to the state legislature and succeeded in getting the state legislature to really enact a series of statutes that creates prohibitions and many other things. You know, the state statutes address charter schools and things that are not of interest to the council here tonight. But as regards local government and the council's or the city of Wheat Ridge's ability to act or prohibition from acting, there's a series of state statutes, and I won't bore you with all their numbers and details, but I can hit you with some highlights from them. And these are things I think that we already know, but I want to emphasize. We've got Colorado statutes that prohibit local law enforcement agencies, so prohibiting Wheat Ridge Police Department from arresting or detaining someone solely on the basis of a federal civil immigration detainer. We've heard a lot about, of course, the difference. Now we're all educated about the difference between civil immigration detainers issued by not a judge and judicial warrants issued by a judge. And that distinction is really important. And I think everyone in the room understands that. But I'm just saying that has recently emanated as a result of state statutes that have said that local governments are prohibited from arresting or detaining solely on that basis. If there is a criminal warrant out for someone, that's a warrant that the police department is authorized to enforce. And I want to make that really clear. In addition, the local governments are prohibited from holding an individual beyond the time they'd otherwise be released. We arrest someone on a criminal warrant, and it's time to release them because under the rules of that warrant or the circumstances of that case, they're to be released. We do that regularly. It's the police department's job, but those persons can't be held any longer just because there's a civil immigration detainer request. So we will release. There's a couple of statutes on personal identifying information and data. And it gets pretty complex when you get into data, but I will say that the overarching theme is that we are not compelled, in fact, we're prohibited from releasing non-public personal identifying information to federal immigration authorities unless there's some other law requiring it. But again, a request isn't a law, and a civil immigration detainer isn't a law that would then compel the city to provide non-personal information. And let's remember that we have a Colorado Open Records Act that also restricts the amount of information that the city is allowed to provide to any requester, whether it be a federal agent or a newspaper reporter or a member of the general public. But the thou shalt not disclose non-personal information on the basis of federal civil immigration requests prohibition is what has emerged as a result of these recent state statutes. The statutes go on to protect data privacy. They also deal with public facilities in saying that federal agents are not permitted to be in non-public areas of public facilities, again, without a judicial warrant. So you'll notice I'm developing a theme here, which is judicial warrants are things that we respect in the past and need to respect, and the state statutes that have been recently enacted don't change that, because once we say that there's an order from a judge that we're now going to start ignoring, that is, we take it seriously that we have to respect the courts, and that's a fundamental tenet of our civilization. But I'm drawing the line between that and civil immigration orders, requests, detainer documents, things that are administratively created but are not approved by a judge. You'll see that theme later as we get to other of the specific items that we're going to talk about tonight. But I wanted to remind us of what that overall statutory and judicial context is. So thanks for your patience in that. I think it's back to you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
So again, the staff memo in your packet that was brought up several times this evening addresses the original 6 requests that we did receive from the public. But we're going to go through each one of those, and we will add additional context based on the additional information that you heard tonight from the speakers and also that we received. So we're going to start with the first request was prohibiting the Wheat Ridge police officers from entering into 287G agreements with ICE, and I want to turn that over to Chief Murtha to speak to that.
Good evening. So the city of Wheat Ridge does not participate in the 287G program, the state program or the federal program that would authorize specifically trained officers to perform certain federal immigration enforcement functions. Staff recommends adopting a policy stating the city will not enter into a 287G agreement without explicit city council authorization. So coming back to the council for any changes in that position. We would formalize existing practice, provide transparency, as we always do, preserve council's authority if federal or state law changes in the future. So this is really looking forward to see, what unanticipated actions the federal government might take that might change our position that we can't anticipate. Residents recommended prohibiting Wheat Ridge participation in all immigration enforcement activities rather than specifically prohibiting participation in civil immigration enforcement. As Mr. Dahl alluded, there are two very distinct sides of the immigration issue. Staff recommends retaining the word civil. That distinction keeps Wheat Ridge Police Department out of the federal civil immigration enforcement while preserving the ability to respond to criminal investigations, criminal warrants, emergency, violence, and officer safety type of situations.
And let me add to that. There's a kind of a local layer in terms of council authorization for an IGA. And I guess I do hear the concerns of the residents that that requirement should come out. And I'd advance the notion that it not only should stay in, but it's really consistent with our charter, which says that the city council is who enters into intergovernmental agreements, and you do so by resolution, and that's a charter provision. And that's actually a safety feature in my mind. It means that kind of cooperation, if it's in an IGA, has to come to the council. I think that's a good thing, honestly, beyond simply being required by the charter. And remember, on tonight's agenda, there were 2 IGAs, you might recall, that the council approved by resolution. Those kinds of IGAs can't just be entered into by the staff. And that's why they come to you. That's why, in my opinion, retaining the language of unless approved by council is required and also consistent with the charter. So.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. We'll move on to item number 2, prohibiting Wheat Ridge police officers from providing collateral support for ICE operations. And Jerry's going to start this one as well.
Yeah, here, and I'm going to hand over to the chief in a minute, but again, within the context of what kinds of warrants, et cetera, the city is required to respond to and what it's not required to. And at the beginning, I indicated there's a prohibition on state law from complying or using or implementing the civil enforcement or civil detainer writs or whatever would administratively be generated by the federal government. So this is consistent that within the context of the city's officers not arresting or detaining, et cetera, outside of criminal warrants issued by a judge, that to me impacts let me back up. That articulates the proper role of Wheat Ridge police officers. That's not collateral support, that's enforcing that's enforcing judicial warrants. It may well be that we're enforcing a judicial warrant that ICE also has some kind of interest in an individual. But if the city is maintaining this division between we're enforcing a judicial warrant here, not your civil detainer, that's the right line to draw. And I get it, that it might be the same person, but I don't believe in that context that the city enforcing a judicial warrant is thereby giving collateral support. It's, again, walking the important line and staying within the lane that it's required to stay within. Chief?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Dahl. So we're recommending a policy that officers will not participate in civil immigration enforcement again. There is plenty of situations that I can imagine and I've been involved in where we do respond to scenes where there is a need for the police department to provide life protection, preserve public safety, sometimes to provide first aid, or investigate violations of criminal law. That may be considered in some people's mind collateral support, but it's really not supporting what they're doing. It's supporting our community is the way I see it. We would go out there and make sure that we are the buffer if we can be, and we are providing the same services we would provide to anybody on any given day if they were in trouble in a situation, but it has nothing to do with enforcement of any ICE operation or assisting them in those operations. So there's a clear distinction between the federal civil immigration enforcement and the responsibility that we have as the Wheat Ridge community's first line of defense to go out there and make sure that we mitigate any issues that we can in those situations.
Thank you, Chief. Jerry, you want to take the next item?
Sure. I recognize that the request on the require immigration enforcement to utilize judicial warrants rather than civil detainers was withdrawn, and I understand why, and I appreciate what the citizens said about their reasons for that. And you heard me at the beginning spend a fair amount of time, and I appreciate your patience in listening to me talk about the difference between judicial warrants and civil detainers and other kinds of documents. So I won't replay that, but I will say here that beyond just not enforcing a federal warrant, the real question is whether and to what extent the federal officers then must adhere to some kind of adhere to that same rule, and what is the city's role in making federal officers adhere to that rule. And let's remember that, like it or not, we have a federal system in this country. We have federal government, state government, local government, and by and large, state governments, of course, can't tell federal agencies how to run their agency. And that's implicated by this here. It's one thing to say, okay, we're not going to enforce a civil detainer, and that's fine. And we draw that line, and we only enforce judicial warrants. But what the city and the state of Colorado, for that matter, doesn't have the power to do is to tell the federal officers, whether, whether and to what degree they may use these documents that they're generating. I absolutely get it, that there are challenges to the federal use of those kinds of instruments. But it's, that's perfectly fine. We have a judicial system that will one day produce results and give us court decisions around that. But meanwhile, I want to stress that it is not the role and not available to the city or the state of Colorado, for that matter, to then give an order for a restriction to a federal officer on their use of their documents. We can control our actions, and we can control the fact that we draw a line between civil detainer documents and judicial warrants. But what we can't control is to order or prevent or interfere with, in some direct way, the use of those kinds of documents by employees and officers of a level of government that we don't have authority over, which is the federal government. I wanted to make sure that we certainly need to establish expectations for our own employees. We will comply with Colorado law, but we won't be expecting our employees to go out and prevent and give orders to a federal officer. And we'll get into the tactical and other decisions in a minute, but that's what I can tell you. It's not a surprise. It's a continuation really of the overview I gave you.
Thanks, Jerry. Item number 4 is prohibiting unidentified ICE officers from operating within Wheat Ridge, and let Chief Murtha speak to this as well.
Thanks. I know there was concern about ICE officers wearing masks or not providing visible identification. And obviously, we don't regulate the federal government, as Mr. Dahl illustrated. So their appearance, their methods, their identification practices are nothing we can enforce. We can't go out and tell them how to do, and actually case law has enforced that, where places have tried to do that and said, there's a supremacy clause and local municipalities don't get to tell the federal government how to operate. So we're not able to do that. The residents reframe their concern around individuals who may falsely claim to be federal officers. Anybody who claims to be something of an officer and is not is certainly something of concern to the Wheat Ridge Police Department. We will vigorously investigate that and respond. That really invokes the term of a resident who reasonably suspects that someone is impersonating an officer. And I say that because in my experience in law enforcement, there are times where people will try and utilize police departments as a cudgel to involve themselves in areas where they fully know that somebody is a federal agent or is acting with authority, but want the local police to come out there and somehow inhibit the actions. We have to be very cautious about that. So where there's legitimate concern, we want to respond. Where there's curiosity, we want to be curious. But where we already know that there may be an operation occurring, where we have information from the federal government that they may be doing something, we are not going to proceed in there in a way that is the same as if somebody says, I just got pulled over and this person has no identification, but they're claiming to be an officer. Of course, we're going to respond to that. But the reason we have good relationships with all of our federal partners is because many years ago we didn't, and that caused a lot of problems between jurisdictions. So we want to make sure that we respond appropriately when we need to. We don't recommend that council prescribe how dispatch works, investigative or tactical procedures work. I'd like to retain that so that we can review our existing procedures and make sure they are solid, because moments change, and the moment has changed a bit with federal enforcement, and determine whether clarification, training, or operational changes are warranted. We're doing that right now. We're looking at all of our policies. We've been looking at them. We've reviewed them several times, but like I said, it's a dynamic field and things change. So if there's something that warrants change, we will do that. We know that people take advantage of moments and may call themselves ICE because ICE officers aren't well documented or weren't well identified. So other folks might see that as an opportunity. So we're going to be cautious, but we're certainly going to be out there and involved where we need to be.
Thank you, Chief. I'll take the next item 5, which is restrict ICE agents from using city-owned property. The city does generally control the voluntary use of its facilities, so we do manage and control that, subject, of course, to any federal warrants or court orders. Staff does recommend administrative policy here stating that city-owned facilities will not be made available for routine civil immigration enforcement activities. Any request from federal immigration authorities to use city properties would have to come to the city manager and city attorney. And we would only comply with any legal requirements. Otherwise, city properties would not be available for ICE operations. The residents did further recommend, though, that we prohibit city property from supporting any ICE operation. We believe, again, that is a little bit of a blanket phrase. Any ICE operation, as the chief mentioned earlier, we do have to deal with emergency responses or criminal investigations or mutual aid or any other legitimate public safety activities that may involve ICE operations, and we don't want to preclude that that could happen on a city property, and our officers would respond to that. So we don't want that blanket again, ICE operation, because we may need to intervene to protect our public again. But for any other civil immigration, routine civil immigration, we recommend adopting a policy that that is not allowed. Chief, do you want to add any to that about the emergency response that you may have to be involved in?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of probably issues that could arise, but I'm thinking about where we say, okay, you cannot conduct any operation on Wheat Ridge property, and there's a foot chase that goes into a Wheat Ridge park. The Wheat Ridge police officer's not going to go out there and say, you stop right there. They may be targeting an individual wanted for a high crime. I don't know what we probably wouldn't know what the crime was, but to get involved in a dynamic situation or any situation that's, evolving onto city property might be an issue of concern for our officers, especially if the rule or the law was passed that, hey, you can't conduct your operation here. They're not going to listen to what we have to say on that. They're going to say, hey, this is an exigent circumstance, and we're going to continue our operation because we have a fugitive or whatever they have. So I think that puts us in conflict with the federal government, and you don't want two armed forces in conflict with each other. So I would suggest that there are probably times where the normal operations I could understand, but there is going to be times where there's a dynamic change to that.
Thank you, Chief. And then the last item is item 6, commit that temporary holding cells will not be used for long-term detention. As you did here this evening, they clarified that they did not mean the city's detention facilities, which we do have here at City Hall, but they did clarify they mean any ICE-operated facilities or detention facilities in the city. The city's zoning code already does strictly prohibit any type of confinement facility, temporary, short-term. There's a long definition of what confinement facility is. We could speak to that, but I believe it's defined as the residents spoke this evening. But our zoning code prohibits any confinement facility in every zone district of the city. So any type of confinement facility currently is not allowed in the city. That's something we could include in a policy resolution if City Council wants to, just to reiterate that fact, but it's already a fact. We don't allow confinement facilities in the city. So that's our comments on the 6 requests from the residents. So in summary, real quick, we recommend that we don't, and we recommend that we do not enter into any 287G agreements unless there's explicit council authorization for some reason in the future that we don't know about. We recommend that we prohibit the police department from participation in civil immigration enforcement while preserving officers' ability to respond to criminal activity and public safety emergencies. reaffirmed compliance with Colorado law and legally valid judicial requirements, as Mr. Dahl mentioned. Take no action concerning the appearance or identification of federal officers, but obviously, as the chief said, vigorously enforce impersonation laws that are on the books today. Restrict the voluntary use of city property for routine civil immigration enforcement. And we could formalize the short-term purpose of police department holding facilities, and then again reiterate that ICE containment facilities are not allowed in the city of Wheat Ridge per zoning code. So those are a summary, but just more broadly, staff recommends maintaining a clear distinction between council policy and police department operations. As you know, council establishes city policy, the city manager administers that policy, and the police chief is responsible for dispatch protocols, training tactics, investigative practices, and departmental procedures. These recommendations are intended to provide clarity and transparency, reflect current city practices, comply with Colorado law, and keep local police resources focused on the safety of the Wheat Ridge community. The fact that staff has not adopted every proposed revision does not mean the underlying concerns have been dismissed. The memorandum reflects staff's independent, professional, operational, and legal advice. Council may consider that advice alongside the additional community recommendations and establish a policy direction it believes appropriate for Wheat Ridge. So with that, we'll leave it open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. We'll go to the council. Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. Thank you, Chief Murtha. I want to start by just pointing out I've got a deep, lifelong respect for law enforcement and the work that's being done there. Being raised by a police officer who's currently doing firearm training in his retirement for many of the recruits that we have come through council. The teachings that I've received from him and watching firsthand the difficulty as a family member of a law enforcement officer has taught me quite a lot about how difficult the job is, and a lot of things that the public has a tendency not to understand or know quite off the cuff. So I just want to start by saying that thank you guys for your presentation on the problem of kind of anonymity in law enforcement. And thank you for reiterating the fact that City of Wheat Ridge Police Department would be very interested if somebody is in a situation where it appears as though they are trying to impersonate law enforcement. You also mentioned a kind of an angle of legitimate concern, like if we are in a situation where we're trying to work with a resident or a citizen that is within our city boundaries that is in a situation where they are being interacted with by unmarked or someone who's not identifying themselves as a particular type of law enforcement. What kind of criteria do you take into account to be able to assess the legitimacy of the concern like that?
So if we do respond, and so our response is really based on whether or not we have information, potentially information provided to us before an operation occurs. So most recently, we've established a better working relationship with ICE and some of their agents. The agents have been here, many of them have been here through multiple administrations. It's not like they all started here in the last administration. So they've been through the ringer, so to speak, but they want to reach out to us. They want to work with us. They understand that we have a stake in their behavior. So we've established a better relationship. We want to maintain that relationship so that they're willing to reach out and say, hey, this is going to occur in your jurisdiction. And if we have that information, we might choose, to approach the situation differently if somebody calls and says somebody's being kidnapped. Kidnapping has a specific term. It's not just because somebody's being grabbed off the street. So we have to take that into the context of the whole situation. However, we also understand there are people who will take advantage of every situation if they're given an opportunity. So if somebody calls and says, look, I've asked for identification, I don't see any identification, I'm nervous about it, we'll respond. Absolutely. We're not going to say we don't believe you. If we just have other information, we may choose to respond with just a supervisor, or we may choose to call and say, is that you guys on 32nd and Pierce? You said you were going to be out there. Is that you right now? Yes, we're in a black Tahoe out there and we're doing operations. We're not going to respond probably for that, because we've confirmed that it is a legitimate law enforcement operation. So we want to be very clear that we are going to respond to any complaint where we can't confirm that it is not that it is a legitimate police officer. But if there are opportunities for us to do it another way, we will. That's working smarter, I think, but that's maintaining the relationships with our federal partners. So that's how that would work.
Thank you. That helps me quite a bit. That to push it a little bit further, if we are in a situation where a confirmation that it is federal law enforcement engaging in the activity, while we are in contact with the individual that is expressing those concerns to us, do we provide that information to that individual?
If Jefferson County Communications is on the line, we would ask them to. And like I said, respond differently doesn't mean we won't respond. It might mean we have a supervisor go out there and try and mitigate, because I believe, and I think probably many chiefs would say this, that our relationship with the community is paramount. And the reason we want to have a relationship is so we can go out there and mediate these situations. So if we can turn what could potentially become a use of force situation by a federal agent into a resolvable situation without force, we want to be part of that. So we would respond out maybe with a supervisor and say, look, you see me, I'm in uniform, I have a Wheat Ridge car, I've checked these folks out, we know they're law enforcement, they're legitimate, you're going to have to comply or they're going to take other actions. And be able to be that intermediary in that conversation where an agency that comes in that has no relationship in the community might not have the trust that we hope we have in our community.
Thank you. I understand that. I also want to ask a little bit about what our current obligations are as local law enforcement in regards to the potential observation of excessive use of force. And I apologize, I know that's a really quite difficult question, but if we get if there's a generalized approach or rules or kind of area that we would see to be able to identify when excessive force is being used, what obligations do we have? Does supremacy prevent us?
Actually, that's interesting because it doesn't specify that in the Colorado law. So there's a duty to intervene, and officers are trained in that duty to intervene. So in a situation where an officer involved observes anybody using excessive force, there would be an obligation for them to step in and stop that from happening. That's Colorado law. Now, that is a very difficult situation because it's cross agencies. It's not within our agency, and it's not within our peer agencies around here. But I've expressed to the officers that my expectation is that we're going to enforce that rule that doesn't bound us just to local municipalities, to anybody who's using it, because quite frankly, excessive use of force is really an assault, and an assault is an assault no matter who's doing it. So we have an obligation to step in there, and we're trained in how we would do that. Generally, we want to stop the assault before it continues. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to arrest somebody on the scene. If that's going to be inflammatory between two agencies, we're going to stop, and then we're going to allow the process to play out, and hopefully, if there is an allegation or if there's a fact pattern that shows excessive force, then that would be played out in the court system at a later time. So it may not end up that we put cuffs on somebody, it probably won't, but we want to step in between those and stop any sort of excessive force.
Thank you, Chief Murtha. I really appreciate that. Mr. Goff, I've got a question regarding confinement facilities being disallowed in our current zoning policy. I kind of a two-parter question. The first part of that question is, what would occur if we discovered one?
Yeah, it'd be a code violation. So we'd go through that process of it would go to the municipal court and adjudicate it in that manner. Mr. Earl, you want to add to that?
Yep. That comes up regularly outside of this context. But, where someone's using property that's zoned residential for some kind of commercial activity that isn't permitted, then usually it's a letter saying, hello, you're conducting an activity that's not permitted at this location. You have to cease that activity. If that doesn't happen, then it rises to the level of municipal court a citation, and they're served with that citation, and show up in municipal court, and that applies to anyone. Now, I will say that we all understand federal preemption. For example, if there were a military base here in Wheat Ridge and that property were owned by the United States government, it gets to decide on that base what the uses can be made of that base and what things can happen on that base. And there's a ton of law, of course, in between, where there's federal activity, but it's not on property owned by the federal government, maybe it's leased. And I think probably the Glenwood Springs case was that example of it, although I think the lease was to a private operator. And that's getting litigated, and good. But I will say there's a continuum on federal preemption, all the way from if it's a military base, we're not enforcing zoning there, despite the fact it's in the city, all the way to it's a federal use through a private individual of private property not owned by the federal government. And I think the cases are kind of fact specific, and I think that's what Glenwood Springs is facing, and we'll see how that evolves. But that's you probably didn't ask for the federal preemption continuum lecture, but you got it anyhow. So there's that.
I'm always happy to receive any legal lecture from you, Mr. Dahl. I have more questions, but I'm gonna back off so I can give some oxygen to the rest of the council.
Thank you. Let's go, Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. Right now, I have a couple follow-up questions to Councilmember Okada's questions. Chief Murtha, when you were talking about the process if the police were outreached about an unidentified or an unmarked federal agent, when you say there would be, if we got confirmation that federal agent was appropriately there, that we would not respond. When you say we're not going to respond, do you mean we're not going to send police officers in? Or does that mean will we continue to communicate with a person?
Yeah, if I said that, I think more times than not, I probably said what I meant to say, which is we would respond differently. So
Okay.
we might respond with a supervisor if we could get in touch with the person by phone, or they're in touch with Jeff Com and we're having a communication through a third party that satisfies that person. I just wanted to know, are they out here? That might satisfy it, but more often than not, we're going to have an officer go by. It's a question of expediency and where it lands on our priority list. So if it's a police impersonator, that's more of a big deal to us than a shoplifting. Unfortunately, we have both. But if it's somebody that we legitimately believe to be there, but we feel like this is going poorly, we're still going to respond. But if there's a domestic violence in progress, we're probably going to tell them, hey, we'll be there in a few more minutes than whatever. So it's really up to a supervisor to prioritize. I'm just saying we'll respond differently. We'll look at it on a case-by-case basis and decide what type of response is required on each one. But we're never going to not respond where we don't have a fact pattern that provides us, a real safe path forward and one that gives us security that we know that this is a police officer or we have no idea if this is, and we're going to have to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. And I know you mentioned that if somebody calls in and says this is a kidnapping, you might question. But if they called in and said, hey, there's someone here, I've asked for identification, they haven't complied, what type of, I guess what my question is how, if somebody were in that situation, I can anticipate that if I were in that situation, I would probably not say, hello, sir, I've asked for identification and they've not complied. I'd probably be freaking out. So how does that impact, like I'd be anxious or nervous or scared. How does that impact the level of response somebody might get?
Yeah, there's not a lot of people who are in those situations who are calm and so I think that's something our officers are very good at dealing with. They understand that there's anxiety. You mentioned the kidnapping, and the reason I bring that up is our officers would respond as a priority call. When we respond priority, that's lights and sirens. So if you say, there's a kidnapping in progress, we're coming as if, a 2-year-old just got scooped off the street. And that's going to put officers at risk, and it's going to put the motoring public at risk and pedestrians potentially at risk. So we know that we raise the stakes, but for a good cause. If somebody uses that term and we're able to say, look, we don't really believe there's a kidnapping there, we're gonna look at it differently again. Like, hey, we know there's an operation going on over there, and if the goal is to get us to pull somebody out of a federal agent's car, it's not going to happen. If they grab somebody and they put them in the car, whether their tactics were something we agree with or not, it's not a kidnapping. It's their tactics, and I'm not saying it's ours. I'm just saying that we have to be careful about that because there's risk associated with responding differently to different calls.
So that's another nuance situation.
That's a nuance, and that's why I say, for me, as a, I know people have certainly emotional outrage and feelings about what they see on TV, but there are times when we have to look at it differently from our perspective and realize that there are other factors that play into the totality of our response.
Thank you. One other follow-up about if a confinement facility was identified in Wheat Ridge, I understand that would be like a code violation and there's a process, like we send a letter. Would that change if the violation we found was that people were being detained? Like, would it go through the standard, we mail a letter process, or would it have some type of expedited response because of the human element to that?
That really wouldn't fall in the police department. That, again, would go back to code violations. So unless there was a condition there that somebody was, being tortured or something, we would certainly investigate that. But, absent anything other than a code violation, I would assume normal process. I'm not sure if there's an expedited process for that, but I'd leave that to either Mr. Goff or Mr. Dahl to comment on.
That's accurate. We don't face the kind of situation you're describing. We're in a new world. And so the kinds of code violations that we've faced in terms of uses of property in the past have not been that exigent. They just haven't. I will say that where there have been code violations that put sort of the public at risk for some reason, it's a industrial kind of activity that's taking place next to a public street, we'd move more quickly for things like that. And occasionally, there's always the potential to go into a court and try to get a temporary restraining order to protect the public based upon whatever fact pattern we're looking at. These are unique and new fact patterns for everyone. So other than telling you that's kind of the range of tools we have, I would need to see, okay, what happened there to really know which tool. I get it that we are necessarily in the zone here of saying, well, what if this, and what if that, and what if that? And that's your job and ours to have this conversation, but it's very difficult to sort of create policy around tonight's or to any given and imagined, without a pejorative intended, imagined fact pattern. And again, it's not a pejorative. We're all trying to imagine what fact patterns there would be. And it's difficult to say, okay, definitely here's what would happen, because we need to compare that to how we've acted in the past and what our tools are. So I'm taking too long to say, in an exigent circumstance, probably a TRO, maybe. But then you're in front of a judge to ask for that.
Yeah. And maybe I'll add to that real quickly too. I think everything we do in government is nuanced, right? All these situations are very nuanced. But an example, different situation, we had a property we needed to abate. It was very dangerous situation, people living in uninhabitable properties. Electricity was being spliced and wired and off of illegally off the utility poles. We moved on that very quickly. I think if we ran into a confinement facility where it looked like it was in very dangerous situation, people's lives were at risk, I think we'd move very quickly. I think Mr. Dahl's right. There's not one blanket answer for any of these. Every day we do something, every situation's different. So it's hard to give a straight answer for that.
Thank you very much. That's it for now.
Mayor Pro Tem Holting.
Thank you, and I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I know we've gone long, but it's an important conversation. I think as we're talking about this, and I think the scenarios are really helpful to run through because I think, you know, we're getting into granular details around like what can we regulate, what can't we. We're in like a really like complicated like legal structure. But meanwhile, we're all thinking about like the lived experience of our neighbors and how this impacts them. And I think one of the principal concerns that is driving the conversation tonight is that, you know, we're talking, you know, like I find myself like struggling to believe that this administration is going to have the kind of communication around their operations. And so, I mean, I've talked with DC Kellogg and Patrick and you, Chief Murtha, around, you know, the relationships that we're trying to maintain, but like the tactics, they're just, I think, not great partners is what we're learning. You know, within the state of Colorado, we don't have direct evidence in our own community of that. But I think one of the concerns I keep having through this is like, you know, what if the reference situation happens and you can't get a confirmation from somebody of, you know, this is in fact legitimate, you know, activity, that there is a judicial warrant, like how, I guess, a better understanding what happens when that uncertainty principle is there. And then the follow-up is the same with the enforcement on the holding cells is, you know, the thought that anyone would cooperate getting anyone in there is also a little bit challenging. Just there's a lot of like well-known and well-documented stories that have happened in our own state where like they just obfuscate more than cooperate. So I'm just, if you can maybe help me understand a little bit better, like how would the PD respond if there was not clarity, there was suspected activity, but there was not like confirmed information from the federal agency in question? Like, how would we handle that?
Let me start by saying a while back, as we all watched some of the activities going on with ICE around the country, we had a terrible relationship, and that was really caused by multiple factors, but we couldn't get answers from anybody about what was happening, when it was happening. We've gotten more, but it's not perfect. So we're trying to evolve that into a better communications. Again, years ago, we failed in many communications aspects, more specifically around 9/11 and dates like that, when we know that some different people had different pieces of information and didn't share it. So we want to make sure that we don't repeat the errors of the past. So we're trying to build this relationship. We see ICE is realized that they've made mistakes, and they're trying to build relationships with municipalities. But in the absence of information, we're always going to act. We don't assume. So we're hoping to have information. We're hoping to have information that we believe is accurate. We're hoping to build trust. If we don't have those things, we'll always respond out and figure it out ourselves. We're full of great officers who can figure out, I'm confident they can figure out almost any situation they're given. It's a question of, resource management. If ICE came here and we're doing multiple operations, how are we going to structure our response to every single situation that occurs? Now, I don't have any information that that's going to happen anytime soon, but we want to be prepared for it, and our officers will always respond if the requirement is to go and figure it out, they'll respond. So if we have it figured out, we're confident, 99.9% confident that we've got it figured out, we may respond differently, and that's what we're hoping for.
That's helpful. And I guess the scenario that comes to mind is that the tactics have changed since the Minneapolis incidents where, they were coming in force and like just trying to be as big a aggressive presence as possible in a really antagonizing, like hostile way. And the tactics now really pivoted to much more discreet operations that are much more targeted and tactical. And so, they're faster. And so I feel like something that's going to come out of this tonight is communication with our community so that they have the information we're talking about tonight, so that, our organized neighbors who are doing really good work with immigrant support services and doing outreach and all of that can communicate to people like what they should do. And if there's an ICE enforcement activity and PD's not able to respond and there's witnesses to it and they, file the report, would the PD follow up on that to make sure there was a judicial warrant to try and get confirmation that that was legitimate activity? Like, what would be a follow-up if there was like a relatively fast action without confirmation of the type of requirements that like our state and then we're considering looking at?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is, would we question the activities of ICE? Again, to Mr. Goff's point, it's a case-by-case basis. We're not going to question every single thing that somebody does and tell the community. We wouldn't have the resources to say, every time you see them, we're going to call and find out if this was legitimate or not. In law enforcement, we don't always assume negative intent. We generally assume that people are acting within the bounds of the law until we have information otherwise. That's not to say that if there's a legitimate concern, hey, they kicked this door in and nobody, I watched and nobody ever produced a piece of paper or anything, and is it possible you could check? We'd maybe be curious about that, but it would be impossible for us if they were doing a full-scale operation that involved a lot of Wheat Ridge to say, hey, we want to find. They'd be under no obligation to answer us, to be quite frank. If we said, hey, we're going to start questioning everything you do in Wheat Ridge, they'll say, we're doing law enforcement activities, okay? And so they could turn the tables on us. So it is tough to thread the idea of having a relationship so we can get the information we need with questioning everything they do. We want to question the things that we know we're concerned about or bother us. We don't want to question everything if it's legitimate or appears to be legitimate. So I just caution that we have a role to play, but we certainly want to maintain our standing in not only our community, but with a little trust we've given to the folks in the federal government.
Okay. And then I want to better understand, I think I heard a distinction, Mr. Dahl, when you were talking about sort of the spectrum of federal authority to do what they want with, if, the military bought a piece of property and built a teeny tiny, cute little military base in our community, that they would have, they'd be able to do what they want with that land. But I heard you make a distinction perhaps that relates to the Glenwood Springs case where it was a leased property and it was leased to a private contractor. So to what extent does that make a difference? I mean, I know you're not a deep expert in this, but I think what I heard you say that if it's a private property, but it's leased to the federal government, do they have more flexibility than if it's leased to a private contractor? I guess I'm trying to understand if there's a distinction in there, if it's a lease versus an ownership.
And I'll say federal preemption litigation is all about that gray area, right? So I'll tell you right now, I don't know how the Glenwood Springs case is going to turn out, either at district court level or if it gets appealed, because each time you're kind of adding to kind of the body of case law around what about federal preemption when we get down to the non-owned federal properties and the leased properties, the licensed properties. If it's leased, maybe that's a property interest, right? But a license isn't. So let me say this. I think that clearly Glenwood Springs is going to push the fact that they have a local zoning and it's not a federal actor. It's a private actor with whom the federal government has a contract. But we don't have the decision out of that case yet. And if you're asking me, how's that case? I'm not sure. I would love to tell you, I know what the answer there is. But even on that federal permit example I just gave you, that had to get litigated to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. I was actually in that case years ago to determine whether or not federal preemption really applied. And each one is so fact specific that it's tough. I can tell you that when you get down to the level of the federal government not being an owner, then it's kind of fair game for the litigation, right? And it's a fair case for Glenwood to bring, and because they've got a real shot. Whereas if it were a military base, they wouldn't, and they wouldn't have tried.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I can't add more than that.
Yeah, no, it's helpful to
Yeah.
just identify how murky and gray it is. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can start going through these kind of, Counselor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have I wanted to appreciate this discussion. I have a couple of clarifying questions. Item number 5. I was curious, and Mr. Dahl, I think that you mentioned this earlier when we were going through these initially, but I wanted to just see if you could clarify on the recommendation around city-owned facilities not being made available for routine civil immigration enforcement activities. Can you just kind of describe what would be the benefit of including routine civil in that statement and why it's necessary or not?
Why it's necessary to limit it in that way?
Yes.
Yeah. For example, routine civil might be, ICE calls up, hi, we'd like to use the parking lot here outside the city building to stage vehicles for operations we're intending to take. That would be, we'd probably view that as a routine civil look like. That is one example I can think of. Hi, we want to use the parking lot. And the city saying no. We have a policy saying we do not allow that, so we're not going to. And it's our parking lot. It's not owned by the federal government, so like anyone else that would want to use it for a farmer's market, we can say yes or no.
Gotcha on that. Thank you for that. Some of that just, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but the message that sends to the rest of our community is very, I mean, it's going to put people, their guard's going to go up anyway.
Yeah, it's not intended to communicate that that other than routine care. I'm struggling a little to try to find a different term than routine, but now you know how I feel about that term.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I think, pulling back from this a little bit, the goal, at least, the reason that we're having this discussion is it's of utmost importance that we are putting so much thought into this for the entirety of our community, and in considering how these things are affecting folks. And I mean everyone in our community, and there are sensitive and folks that are at risk right now in our community that I'm, trying to look at this through that lens. And so the questions I'm not forming well enough. Like you just said, the use of the word routine it's incredibly different in that particular context. So I'm just kind of trying to think about this and pulling away a little bit from how this looks, for us to actually have something that's meaningful and makes our community feel supported and safe. The other thing I just wanted to clarify really quickly, just the second bullet point there, any request for use of city property by federal immigration authorities shall be reviewed by the city manager and city attorney. In that instance, if that were to happen, would the city manager and you, Mr. Dahl, would you need to let us know? Would you let us know? How does that usually, would we not know? How does that usually happen, or how would it happen?
Good question. Patrick can probably just on sort of, I'll use day-to-day as opposed to routine, but day-to-day, because we're asked all the time, probably every day, if somebody wants to use city property for something. And probably rarely we say, we inform you there was this request. But,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think if we authorize something, unless it was, and I'll let the chief respond, some type of undercover investigation, I think it's important to realize as bad as ICE is, as bad as people think, what ICE is, right, today, and what they believe ICE is, ICE does a lot of other activities as well, right, law enforcement activities. The chief used an example the other day. They may be going after a narco criminal from another country that happens to be in Wheat Ridge. That's legitimate in our mind, law enforcement activity. And that may be a situation where they come to the city and say, we want to do something over here on city property because we have this guy in this building. It's just an example, right? I think that's something that we'd want to respond to, and it's probably something I couldn't tell council if they asked us until they apprehended this person, but I'm not sure how articulate I'm being, but Chris, can you add to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's real life examples of ways we become entangled in operations that are not necessarily immigration operations, but ICE has a database of people who've crossed the border that sometimes come to our attention. Now, it's not because we're looking for immigration status, but an example would be if our task force was out, and our task force is embedded with the Drug Enforcement Agency, and we're after narco-terrorists. We often come in contact lately with cartel members from Central and South America, Mexico, and those members have associates with them that we have no idea, that have no identification, that have no information for us, but they're somehow dealing with large drug transactions, weapons, other allegations of criminal activity that only ICE can really identify through their database. So it is possible DEA or an agency that does work with the federal government would call them in, and our officers would be on that task force. We've had that in Wheat Ridge, where I've told them, don't participate in it, participate in the perimeter, but we're not, we're just not going to be part of a photograph of an operation. However, there are dangerous people out there that you would need the help of the federal government, and sometimes you need the help of ICE. So I can see that. Where it comes to the property, let's say you had a use of force or an agent from immigrations, during the course of their activities discharged a weapon. I mean, I wouldn't want to say you can't conduct your investigation on, at Hayward Park because you're not allowed to. Who's going to do it? So, I mean, these are one-offs. I think what we're saying is, and I'm not saying I can word it any better than Mr. Dahl already has, but absent exigent circumstances, we wouldn't allow them. If they came and said, we want to use your parking lot, and we said no, and they pulled in, we'd start writing them tickets and say, listen, you're not authorized to be on the property. That is one time where we would say, listen, you're not allowed to be here. It's against the rules, and so we're going to take an action against the federal government. That's a simple action, and I don't see the conflict there. But there are other instances where things do spill over wherever they spill over, and we've got a lot of property here on Wheat Ridge. So between the Greenbelt, between our public spaces, our parks, our open space, we've got a lot of places where they could end up. And so I just would be very hesitant to say, blanket statement, you can never touch a Wheat Ridge piece of property. And then to go back to where it comes to our interactions with ICE, they do a lot of things that are outside of, generally the type of thing we're talking about tonight. Some of it is customs enforcement. I've had cases where back in the day when it used to be 8-track tapes, a truckload of 8-track tapes ended up in my beat, and I had to figure out what to do with it. And luckily, Customs said, we'll help you through that. So, there is other branches of this that say, listen, if you find a bunch of counterfeit tapes, we'll help you. We want to be able to do that too. So we're all thinking about one scenario that we've seen on TV or another scenario we've seen on TV. I'm thinking about all the scenarios I've seen that could be complicated.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chief. I appreciate it.
We'll go to Counselor Quinn first.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Did you say 8-track tapes?
If you remember what those were.
I was going to say,
Yeah, and
you kind of dated.
try and inventory 5,000 of those different tapes, and you'll know what a long day looks like.
And now they're worth absolutely zero. A couple of things. Number one, I want to thank the public for their advocacy tonight. It's heroic and admirable. And I also want to thank Patrick and Mr. Dahl and you, Chief, for and your staff for considering all of this and trying to work with the community and coming out with the solution. And I'm sure nobody's going to leave here completely satisfied and happy, but I'm hopeful we can leave here tonight with a good direction to go. And I think the situation is going to be fluid, and we can probably revisit this if need be in the future. Chief, you've been talking about getting notification from ICE. Do they notify you at everything, or just what's that relationship like? Just
We're trying to have more regular check-ins with them, so I don't think they would notify us about everything. I think it's become a pretty leaky ship for them, the way they describe it. When they notify the locals, it tends to get out, and then you have either crowds showing up or other activities. So they're a little wary about how they release information, but generally speaking, if they're doing a pre-planned operation in a jurisdiction, they'll give you at least some heads up. It may not be the time frame that you would want, but it would be before the operation began. It just wouldn't be enough time to do much about it. But that has been our MO lately is sort of a weekly check-in. Hey, where's the federal government at with operations in the Denver metropolitan area? What's happening? Can you tell us, give us, and we've gotten a general sense of how things are moving. So at least we've seen those things come to fruition. So there is some truth to what they're telling us right now, because the things they said have been accurate. So we're hoping to continue on that and continue to have a form of communication, because absent that, we're going to be operating completely in the dark with respect to what they're doing. So we don't want to be partners, but we want to be able to understand. So that's where we're headed.
Thanks for your candor on that. I think that's important. Mr. Goff, what is the difference between the Glenwood? Was it Glenwood Springs that did the code change, and what we have? Is there a difference in it on how they've been able to get in the news and get in the eye of everybody?
I'm not real familiar with Glenwood Springs case, but I can tell you Wheat Ridge, again, our code does not allow any type of confinement facility in Wheat Ridge in any zone district. I think that's where Glenwood Springs is going to, changing their zoning to not allow it anywhere. There's the nuance again of somebody leasing a facility, but it's not allowed. Doesn't matter if it's leased by ICE or owned by ICE. It would still be violation of our code.
Perfect. And I think, Chief, you covered something I was going to ask on city property. So again, thank you everyone for coming out and struggling through this with us, and appreciate everything.
Before I go back to Councilor Okada, has anybody not spoken that would like to speak? Because we're running into getting a little late and we haven't even touched any of the specific touches yet. Councilor Wood.
I'm being a little redundant, and I'll make it fast. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank everyone for coming. And also thank Wheat Ridge staff, Chief Murtha, Patrick Goff, and Jerry Dahl for their responses and thoughtful approach to things as well. To me, what really strikes so clear is that the values across the board are the same, and it's the value of people and trying to take care of people and community members. And I think everybody in the room comes at that from the same place. and trying to arrive at how we do it and what's acceptable to all it is maybe where the conversation is. But starting with the same value is a great place to begin.
All right, I'll go back to Councilor Okada.
My question's been answered. Thank you. I think we might be starting to aim to a place where we're building consensus on some of these pieces here. I'm so sorry. Just a small slice of a question. So, Manager Goff, you mentioned when we were talking about our zone currently disallowing that. You mentioned, and I think it's part of the recommendation in the memo as well, but a policy to reinforce that as well. Placing that alongside any other policy that we make consensus to recommend here, would that? I understand that already would be an expedient situation, kind of like the example that you had previously. But could that policy also demand expediency?
Yeah, I think that's council. It's your city. It's your code. You could say if you come across any detention confinement facility, it's a immediate abatement, 24-hour type thing or something. You could put any restrictions on it, bypassing court, I guess. I mean, you have to have, maybe you speak, I'm getting into legal terms, so maybe you should speak to that.
You certainly could create sort of a accelerated enforcement process for almost any abatement where the city would go and do physical things on private property. I uniformly recommend, unless there's some imminent danger of explosion or whatever, that we get a court order. And I've gotten court orders to demolish structures and to do various things, but if you're going to come onto someone's private property, that's not something that administratively you want to order. You really want a judicial order for that. But we could certainly structure an accelerated process to do that. And in the event following circumstances were found to be reasonably likely to be occurring, then that event, the city shall proceed in municipal court and obtain an order to first to inspect and then to abate. And I always ask for inspection first, because sometimes when you get there and you look at it, it's different. You don't want your abatement forces to just go out there and start demolishing property until you've confirmed what you thought was true. But you want to make sure you have an opportunity to confirm. So we often do inspection, and if in the event inspection determines X, Y, and Z, then abatement, and I wrap that all into the same municipal court order, so I have to go back to the court after inspection to ask for abatement. But we could do that.
Just to clarify the procedure, the timing of that would be a claim that there's a problem, followed by a court order, followed by inspection, followed by court order, followed by abatement? Or is that first court order imagined by me?
Yeah, I was saying the order of events would be, reasonable determination by a city official that the confinement was in fact taking place in violation of the zoning requirement that there be no confinement permitted. That at that level, you have to have some kind of reasonable administrative determination. And in that event, then proceeding to immediately within X hours or within X days, appear before the municipal court to request an order that does two things. Same order, one order, two things within that order. Order the right to inspect, so you go on the property to check, and the right, in the event the inspection determines the following conditions exist, the authority to abate.
Gotcha.
That's how it would work.
And you wouldn't recommend that we skip, or that we write policy that would skip the court order? I imagine likely because it could jeopardize the outcome.
I wouldn't recommend that. That's why uniformly, to make abatement really stick, I want to have done it under authority of the court.
Understood. Cool. As described, I do want to just comment that I feel strongly that should be a piece of the policy that we put together here.
All right, let's tackle these one by one and see if we can come to a consensus. So let's go. Item number 1, prohibit Wheat Ridge police officers from entering into a 287G agreement. The staff recommendation is there. Do we have a consensus on moving forward with staff recommendation on item number 1? Seeing hands slowly go up. Okay, so we do have a consensus to move forward with the staff recommendation on item number 1.
Can
Mayor Pro Tem Hultine.
Thank you. I'd like to just make a quick comment. I heard the request to remove the council approval, and I just really feel like that's actually a strong protection, and make sure that if any changes happen, they're not happening administratively. It makes public accountability, and if a future council doesn't feel like this is something that, they want to take the same level of like vigilance and stewardship that we do, we need to make sure we're electing council that represents our community. So my concern is if we did this and we didn't have the public discourse piece of it, we could end up with a future city manager who would be willing just to do this and not have any public discussion about it. So I hear the concerns about it, but I think without the council piece in there, there's just a lot more risks of what could be happening without people knowing it. So that's why I'm in support of it.
Moving on to item number 2, prohibit Wheat Ridge police officers from providing collateral support for ICE operations. You have the staff recommendation there. Do we have discussion on the staff recommendation? Do we have consensus on the staff recommendation to move forward with item number 2? See if we have everybody's hands. I just want to make sure. Okay, we do. We have consensus to move forward with the staff recommendation for item number 2. Any comments or anything on that before we move on? Okay, moving on to 3, require immigration enforcement to utilize judicial warrants rather than civil detainers. We've got the staff recommendation here. Do we have discussion on that first? Councilor Cotta.
To reiterate, so just with some of the staff recommendation to make sure that we have this out in the air. No adoption for the request as written because it exceeds municipal authority. Instead, reaffirming that we already are in a state where we have those same requirements. Just making sure that I'm understanding that in the same way that everybody else is.
Do we have consensus to move forward with item? Go ahead, Member Pro Tem.
Sorry, it is starting to get late. My hearing gets a little bit not great, but I think it's important that we include any affirmations of our compliance with the state law, in part because I think part of what comes out of this is going to be communications. So just making sure that we're clearly communicating with the state law and that we are aware of it and complying with it should be part of whatever comes out of this and whatever communications we do with our community.
Okay. Do we have consensus on those 2? We do. Okay, moving on to item number 4, prohibit unidentified ICE officers from operating within Wheat Ridge. Staff recommends no action. Do we, Councilor O'Connor?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hultine. I really agree with your sentiment that you added to the last point. I feel like this point too is very similar in that same way. The potential of education for what our Wheat Ridge PD currently, what the position is in that regard, could be a piece of the education that comes out of this. Because I think that's really important for everybody to know that that if you're in a situation where someone's trying to enforce on you and they're not identifying who they are, that calling 911 is the most appropriate thing to do.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, sorry, we're volleying back and forth. I heard in the chief's comments that, as has been mentioned a couple times tonight, we're in a new era, and a new era is forcing agencies across the country and across different governmental departments to look at procedures. And I want to be really clear, we've said it a couple times tonight, council does not set procedure, we set policy, and then that goes through the manager and on down. I'm wondering if there isn't a way, Chief, as you're doing your internal examination in terms of, like, are there different procedures that need to come out of emerging practices on federal enforcement and, knowing who's doing what? Is there a way of reporting back the findings and any procedural changes could that get reported to the city manager and shared with councilors so that we're made aware of those?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
I think, like you illuminated to, we're definitely in a new era. This wasn't totally anticipated when the policy was written, that we would have specific instances and it might be exploited. So we're looking at pretty closely at that.
Okay, yeah, so as things come out, like if at some point that review has resulted in a couple of like key things that are being changed, again, it'd just be for our information to know, if there's anything that comes out of that that would be helpful.
Yes, I think we'll probably write a specific section on how to deal with federal identification in instances like we've seen, so.
Okay, we appreciate you keeping us informed on that.
Do we have a consensus to move forward with, Councilor Martell?
I would like to ask, I think this would be a question to Mayor Stites, if it, instead of a no action on item number 4, if this could be something that I'm sorry, it's getting late. I'm having trouble with my words. If reaffirming that Wheat Ridge Police Department is committed to enforcing Colorado's existing laws could be a policy resolution or a part of the policy resolution on this
Yeah,
topic.
for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that to make that statement instead of just no action shows our commitment that the structure's there. Thank you.
Do we have a consensus to move forward with Councilor Martell's recommendation and the recommendation? We do, okay. Moving on to number 5, restrict ICE agents from using city-owned property. You've got the recommendation there. Do we have discussion on that? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, thank you. Counselor Snell really raised the question I have. I've circled the word routine in here. And I think it would be helpful for us to maybe provide a little bit better definition of routine. I don't know if that's possible. In other parts of the recommendations out of the memo, we name things like Wheat Ridge Police Department may respond only when necessary to protect life, preserve public safety, or investigate violations or criminal law. I wonder if there could be a little bit more texture around routine. And I know we're really threading a lot of needles tonight around trying to be effective without being overly prescriptive. So I guess it's first a question, and if it's too hard to add that textual language, I'm supportive of the recommendation overall, but I think I had questions about the word routine as well and how that.
Yeah, and that word was not chosen for any reason.
Okay.
So I think we could put our heads together, and when we come back with some policy statements, give you some different words.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think,
speak tonight either, losing my words.
yeah, we're all losing our words, but that word, let's lose it. Let's
Lose
lose routine.
routine.
And when this comes back, to have a little bit better description of how routine might be distinguished, especially since this is something that would fall into administrative review. So, thank you.
Councilor Martell?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to kind of bounce off of what Mayor Pro Tem Holteen said, because I also had routine circled and called out. And I think that the statement, city-owned facilities should not be made available for routine civil immigration. It's not a double negative, but it almost reads like a double negative. A suggestion might be to turn that around to say, maybe, not will be, but may be made available for emergency or special circumstances, is sort of like the example that Mayor Pro Tem Holteen brought up.
Yeah, we could clean that up. But in general, consensus on that general thought, but just clean up the language is what I'm hearing.
Okay, do we have consensus
Yep.
on that, moving forward with just cleaned up language around routine and? We do. All right, moving on to item number 6, commit that temporary holding cells will not be used for long-term detention. We've got the recommendation there. Any discussion on that? Councilor Martell?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is another point that would benefit from policy resolution as well.
Yeah. Just confirming that we don't by zoning. Yep.
Counselor O'Connor?
From my position, and I may be in the minority here, the adding to policy the expediency of the as was discussed with Mr. Dahl, into our policy, something that I think is a little bit stronger than resolution would be something that we can use to reinforce the zoning for these specific instances. I think that would have a durable effect, and I think it would also be stable without overprescription. That's my opinion, and I am happy to be on an island on that.
Counselor Quinn, did you have a comment on that?
No, I was just, some with a little more teeth, like Counselor Okada had talked about earlier.
Do we have consensus to move forward with the recommendation with some more teeth?
With the expedited process if confinement facilities are found.
Counselor Martell, is that a?
I was just going to ask about expedited procedure, so thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Team? Okay.
Sorry, I have a question. Again, I just keep imagining this like non-cooperative federal government, which we're hearing is more cooperative and is not entirely not cooperative, but can we provide teeth that, I mean, if they don't give us access, how do we determine reasonable? And I know that Mr. Dahl had said we wouldn't want to do anything without having reasonable cause to believe that it's in violation, but I mean, not allowing us access, does that trigger, is there something then that we can enforce for them not allowing access or reasonable certain, I mean,
Well,
is there a
sure.
way
I
to
mean, what we're
not
trying-
get totally mired in like
What we're trying to do is draft that code section right here this minute, but, and I understand you want to be able to give us enough directions to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I would approach it the same way we approach other recalcitrant property owners, some of who don't come to the door, some of whom you get the notice posted on the door and they don't let you in. And so I think what I would want to do, and I appreciate what you're suggesting, what I'd want to do, I guess, is think more carefully about how to articulate the powers of the inspection and or what I would be asking the judge for.
Mhm.
And without having to go back to the judge once is I think what you're saying, a recalcitrant owner. And allow me to spend some time articulating in the policy that will come back to you what I think the elements of that new code section would be. And I think if I'm allowed to take some time to do that, armed with the concern you just raised, which I recognize, I think I can probably come up with the appropriate language.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But
Thank you.
I hear the need
Yeah.
and I can address it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do we have consensus to move that forward? We do. Okay. Anything else on that, Mr. Goff?
I believe that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to, sorry, thank you. I know we're all trying to get out of here. So the original memo that we received did make mention specifically about Wheat Ridge's own holding cells. And I know that we pivoted the conversation towards like other holding cells, not our own. And so I just want to check and make sure we're okay not addressing what was in the original memo for clarity, since that was specifically put to us. So, okay, I'm just for clarity wanting to say like it was in there. Okay, cool, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dahl, Chief Murtha, Mr. Goff. Thank you for that. Thank you to members of the public who came to spoke tonight and hopefully feel like you've got a good handle on it. All right, we will move on to item number 2, staff reports.
Nothing else from me this evening, Mr. Dahl? Mr. Murtha, nothing?
Nothing, okay. Elected officials reports, keeping in mind we've been here for a couple hours. Councilor Okada.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to city staff, to council for the work that's being done there. Thank you to the public community. That activism and coordination, thoughtfulness, willingness to compromise, and acknowledgement of learning and being able to explore in those different areas, and also the eloquence at the podium. Thank you guys for all of that. I really appreciate that. I also, want to say, I'm so happy and proud to be on this body. That was a lot of work, not just here on the dais, but a lot of work thinking through all the possibilities, and what a complicated document to get through in one study session. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
And thank you, Mayor. Other than this is Fat Marmot Week, I think I'm done.
Councilor Wood.
Say is to add another thank you. This item tonight, as well as the celebration earlier, and our city champions, our folks who have stood up to be on the Sustainability Committee, makes me proud once again of Wheat Ridge and the people who live here.
Councilor Quinn.
I too got to thank everybody here and the folks that couldn't join us that wrote in. It's honorable and it's admirable to do what y'all are doing, to advocate for those that can't. I do it through the union all the time, and it is a job well done and not very well paid. So I appreciate y'all being here. I did finally get to Prost over the weekend and had a great time. Thank God the buses go right by that, because that was a long walk from my house. I thought I was in a lot better shape, but just remember, round is a shape.
Thank you, Councilor Quinn. Councilor Martell.
Not sure how to follow that. But, I too want to thank everybody for everybody here on council and staff, and all of the residents of Wheat Ridge who came in and spoke and took the time to put a lot of work into this topic. I'm proud of what we were able to do tonight. I also made it to Prost for the ribbon cutting. It was super fun. And I also want to thank all of the applicants for Sustainable Wheat Ridge. I recently joined Sustainable Wheat Ridge as the council liaison, and I'm looking forward to getting that up to a full committee and see what we can get done. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just a couple of things. Number one, Councilor Martell and I had office hours last week, and we actually had them in the afternoon on the beautiful patio of rolling smoke, where it always smells delicious. And I wanted to just thank the folks that came out, because we're trying different time slots so that we can catch everyone. I know that not everyone is available in the morning. I know that not everyone is available in the afternoon, but we're doing our best to try to be accessible to everyone. And so if coming to talk to us wasn't enough, there's delicious barbecue, and Coop and his team there do a great job. So we are happy to have that, and we will probably visit that patio again for office hours. So I just wanted to say a thank you for that. And then I also just wanted to recognize our residents here who have not only spent your entire evening with us, we're grateful for that, but more so just what's driving you and what's driving your suggestions to us, your passion about it, because it is about looking out for everyone in our community and looking out for folks who are not able to always speak for themselves. And I am incredibly moved by that. And I want all of you to know that this is a continuing conversation. You can always reach out. We did a lot of good work up here. I think we had some good conversation. I appreciate those, my fellow counselors that actually spoke and said, provided feedback on this. I think it is incredibly important to us as a city. When we look back, I know that someone mentioned how history is going to view this. And I think that we need to really make sure that we are on the right side of history. And I think that this is an incredibly important moment in time, because some really terrible things are happening to people that don't deserve it. So I appreciate so much your work on this, and please keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I think everybody in the community wants a safer community, and we'll try to advocate for our people and appreciate the leaders that have stood up, not just my fellow council members, but you in the audience, that you're advocating for the people that have a tough time, coming here in person and trying to navigate this tough area. And I will say that, what was brought the study session was very well vetted, very well thought out. I didn't really have a lot of questions because I felt that it had covered a lot of material, but it was a really great dialogue and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hilton.
Continued thanks to everyone. We just had a lot of great people in this room tonight, and they're doing good work in our community on behalf of others, and just really grateful for that. I'm glad we got something done. I know that there's an appetite to have done more. So I just want to say that this door is not closed tonight. If things change in our community, we very much will pick this up again, because we have commitment from our staff and this council to keep doing things, but we don't want to overcorrect in a way that we have a police department that's trying to navigate and mitigate things. So I just really want to make clear, we want to keep hearing from you, and if what we're doing or how we're communicating it needs attention, you know how to reach us, and we want to hear from you. So that's really important because the situation is changing. On that note, everybody please vote this November, and maybe we can have a little bit more checks on this stuff. So a couple of just really quick things. I believe everyone on the dais has received an invitation for the September 29th Courageous Colorado Democracy Community Conversation. I invite everybody in the room to join us September 29th at 5 p.m. at the Rec Center. It's a 90-minute community conversation about local democracy innovations right here in Wheat Ridge. And it's an actual action conversation. There will be prioritization of things that could be considered. And then Courageous Colorado actually provides some technical support to see if any of those can be enacted. So really important conversation. And I know a lot of people here tonight care a lot about increasing access to democratic voice in our community. I want to thank the city for being a great partner in supporting safety for the students going back to school at Stevens. There's been great collaboration with our police department to create some visibility, to raise awareness to more students walking and biking to school. I saw that there was a message board up. Local Works is partnering to help with the back to school banner to go across the 38th Avenue in front of the Green. So that type of coordinated work really does make a safer and more encouraging community for our kids who want to walk or ride to school. I'm going to skip the Dr. Cog update. I will give that to you guys another time. But I do want to see if there's support from this council for us to bring back a resolution supporting the ballot measure that we referred to the ballot tonight. Is there support at our next meeting to have a resolution in support of the ballot measure? All right, that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody tonight. Thank you to all the residents who showed up and voiced their opinion and helped us craft hopefully some very thought out policies and ways that we can help our police officers in our city stay safe. I want to thank everybody who came tonight from the Rotary and for our, I guess technically our first Dominic Breton Community Champion Award. So thank you to everybody for doing amazing things in our community, and please keep those nominations coming in. We'll be giving one of those awards out at our second meeting every month. So we've got a lot of months to fill. So please make sure you're nominating your neighbors and people in your community. That it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could just be something that they're doing that's helping other people. And we also want to hear from you about the organizations. We have been able to talk about some of the amazing ones already, but we've got a lot of amazing organizations and schools and different things like that in our community as well. So make sure that you're safe in our community. We will not be here next week. It's the 5th Monday, and the following Monday is Labor Day. So we have 2 Mondays off. So counselors, stay safe. Don't do anything too crazy. So we will be back in September for our next meeting. So thank you very much. Be safe in our community, and as usual, if you can find it, Maya and Wheat Ridge. Thank you.